A woman with dark hair and captivating purple eyes made a startling discovery, gasping as she collapsed to the ground in an exquisite black lace dress, clutching her chest in pain. Her purple eyes widened in disbelief, thinking, as she found herself bewildered, sitting on a lavishly ornate bed in an unfamiliar room. Gazing at her reflection in the mirror, she smiled, wondering if this was the famous transmigration trope she had read about. She examined her new features: black hair with a blue sheen, purple eyes, and rosy lips. She marveled at her appearance, concluding that only otherworldly beauty could explain it all. A vision appeared of her as a bride, being held by a handsome groom. She imagined another path, escaping a paranoid crown prince on a white horse. A third possibility flashed by, becoming an apprentice to a great magician and turning the world upside down. Returning to reality, she clasped her hands with a brilliant smile, excited for what was to come. But her excitement turned to confusion as she looked at the story summaries floating around her, wondering which novel she had entered. An hour after her possession, the hall remained silent and empty. She lay lazily on a chaise lounge, feeling lucky not to have possessed a body that had drowned in a lake. She recalled her futile attempts to manifest magic or find hidden traits in her new body. While admiring her beautiful new self, she lamented that she would have preferred a brighter, more elegant dress. A thought suddenly struck her, and her expression turned serious as she began to examine her mood. Looking at the black dress she wore, she realized it closely resembled mourning clothes, praying that wasn't the case. She forced a nervous laugh, trying to convince herself her luck couldn't be that bad. She paced the room, desperate for some hint about her situation. Her attention was drawn to a set of massive, golden double doors. With a creak, she pushed them open, her face filled with hope and anticipation. She recoiled in shock, questioning what she was seeing. Inside the wardrobe, she found every single dress, garment, and shoe was black, and she cried out in frustration. "Damn it!" she exclaimed, slamming the wardrobe doors in frustration. After taking a deep breath, she nervously decided the best course of action was to find someone. She lamented the lack of a helpful NPC servant, noting the dead silence since she'd woken up and recalling a reminder to maintain her dignity. Standing at the door, she wondered if she was a villain, but then thought that with a face this pretty, someone should at least try to sell her off. She shouted into the empty hall, desperate for any sign of life. Shivering, she wondered if this was a horror house or a thriller scene, then cautiously began to walk forward. She ran out of the grand mansion, panting for breath. Stopping suddenly, she clutched her chest and exclaimed, "Oh my goodness!" She gazed in awe at the enchanting fantasy landscape, finally confirming she was in a novel. The idyllic scene of a beautiful lake at sunset confirmed her thoughts. This was paradise. Surrounded by flowers, she clutched her heart, filled with relief and joy. A thud broke the silence as a basket hit the ground. She turned to see a maid who had dropped her laundry, and the purple-eyed woman wondered who she was. She smiled brightly, trying to figure out what to call the stranger, considering lady or princess. The maid let out a scream filled with utter terror. The woman was startled by the intense reaction, dryly noting that even this surprise felt like a scene from a novel. As the woman asked if there was something on her face, the terrified maid stared at her, wondering what on earth was wrong with her. The maid dropped her basket and fled, leaving the woman standing there, dumbfounded. "Excuse me." "Hey, wait a minute," the woman called out, trying to stop the fleeing maid. She reached out desperately, realizing she needed answers to plan her life, but the maid had already disappeared into the distance. She chased after her, completely bewildered, demanding to know what was going on. Alone again, she stood panting by the lake, shouting in frustration, "Why did you run away?" Panicked, she didn't know what to do now, afraid to return to the empty, eerie house alone. Looking in the direction the maid had fled, she hoped it would lead to a place with people. As she walked toward the lake under multiple moons, she wondered why her body and steps felt so heavy. She felt as if she were wrapped in a thick down blanket, a strange and itchy sensation enveloping her as black feathers burst out around her. The woman screamed in terror as her body began to transform. now a black swan. She struggled in panic, unable to believe she had lost her human limbs. Staring at her reflection in the lake, she realized with horror that she had become a black swan. As a woman in an elegant red dress approached, she wondered what was happening. The black swan demanded to know who the woman with white twin braids was. The white-braided woman simply gave her answer. Sure enough, a beautiful woman with long white hair in a red formal robe appeared, scolding the swan for wandering off. The swan looked up at the woman, thinking one word in shock: mother. As shimmering red chains bound both her human and swan forms, the white-haired woman smiled cruelly. She introduced her original self, Catherine, the daughter of a minor baron whose father died early, sold off to an old man. After her extravagant stepmother bankrupted the family, Catherine was sold off, shown looking disheartened in a wedding dress. Her buyer was no ordinary count, but the regent of the empire's north, the powerful Duke of Ivandel. She revealed that the Duke died on their wedding night, making her suspect the marriage was a sham from the start. The gravely injured Duke had no wife, but two daughters, one with white hair and one with black. His eldest daughter, Princess Rania, was already ruling the north with exceptional skill. The scene showed Princess Rania standing solemnly by her dying father's bedside. A close-up revealed Rania's determined and calculating gaze. Imperial law dictated that without a male heir, all of Rania's efforts to rule would be for naught. However, a widowed duchess could suspend the succession for 1 year, buying precious time. This 1-year grace period was crucial for Rania to prevent a rival son-in-law from taking over. To ensure this, Rania needed an insignificant stepmother from a poor, powerless family like Catherine. The swan stared at her human reflection, finally understanding her role in this scheme, and thought, "That's me." The black swan cried out in a flash of fury, realizing the full extent of the princess's plot. The cunning Princess Rania, still feeling uneasy, decided to place a curse on her new stepmother, just in case. The curse was depicted as Catherine falling into a void, bound by chains. After separating from the princess, Rania explained to others that her new mother was bedridden with grief, leaving everything in her hands. As the absolute power in the north, Rania was proficient in black magic, proving she would stop at nothing to maintain control. The black swan sarcastically fumed, so grateful for such a generous possession in this unexpected marriage. She was furious at the absurdity of it all, her husband dying on their wedding night, followed by being cursed by her stepdaughter. The curse was simple. By day, she was the beautiful Catherine, but under the moonlight, she would become a black swan. This discovery meant she couldn't go out recklessly, as a vision showed Rania watching her transformation. As a black swan, she deemed it too dangerous to escape and scoffed that her beauty would attract a crowd. Sighing, Catherine, back in her human form, lamented that she had never wanted to be the center of public attention. However, as a swan, she couldn't help but admire her own overwhelming noble dignity in the mirror. A white goose named Celine, an information broker, asked if the lady wanted to go inside before sunrise. The black swan sneered, thinking the clever princess never expected her to find a way to enjoy this leisurely life. She declared herself the queen of this lake, where half the residents were also humans cursed by the princess. A duckling reported to the swan that no one recognized the name she had asked about. Realizing she wasn't the main character, her mind went blank, wondering what novel world she was in. The scene flashed back to her painful transformation from human to swan. Now back in human form, she landed gracefully among the flowers in her black dress, composed and noble. A woman with black hair in a red dress, Rebecca, asked if she enjoyed this life. Catherine playfully suggested she ask her sister. An angry Rebecca warned her not to be disrespectful, threatening that she could be turned into an animal forever. Catherine sneered, knowing this would also trouble Rania, who occasionally needed the Duchess of Ivandel to cooperate with her plans. As Catherine turned to leave, an enraged Rebecca shouted, "Hey!" Catherine walked calmly toward the grand mansion, thinking, yes. Sitting by the lake, Catherine acknowledged Celine's sharpness when the duckling noted her bad mood after Lady Rebecca's visit. She explained that Celine's keen insight was precisely why she was cursed, as she had discovered a merchant's secret identity as a black magician. Celine tried to comfort Catherine not to mind Rebecca's behavior, but Catherine trailed off, clearly still holding a grudge. She mused about her two stepdaughters, the perverse Rania and the hot-tempered villain Rebecca, wondering how different things would be if they were her own. She reflected that in her past life, as an orphan, she had deeply longed for a family. She dreamed of having a daughter with sparkling eyes, sweet and innocent, a stark contrast to her current reality. In reality, she was trapped under the control of two wicked stepdaughters, Rania and Rebecca. While fishing, she unexpectedly caught a talking fish that introduced itself as Lord Cedric, realizing she had caught another cursed person. As Catherine told the fish to wait, the duckling Celine addressed her as my lady. To Catherine's surprise, the duckling angrily scolded the fish for not responding to her. Catherine closed her eyes wearily, feeling that such squabbles were no longer important, her black swan form appearing beside her. The other cursed animal residents of the lake watched the commotion uneasily. The duckling spotted Rebecca approaching and alerted Catherine, now in her black swan form, who calmly confirmed it. The gray-haired Rebecca stood among the flowers with a confident and knowing smile. Rebecca's voice echoed from a past memory, sarcastically calling Catherine mother. In a flashback, Catherine coldly reminded an angry Rebecca that mother was her proper title. As Rebecca stormed off, threatening revenge, Catherine scoffed, thinking nothing could be more terrifying than her current half-beast existence. Walking back to the mansion, she recalled her initial childish plan to run away and find a magician. The Black Swan told Celine a cautionary tale about two ducks who tried to escape and were turned into snails. Catherine stopped abruptly, astonished by what she saw, and exclaimed, "Oh my goodness!" Under the beautiful starry sky, she discovered a small, adorable baby swan with bright red eyes nestled in the flowers. She marveled at the discovery, thinking, "My goodness." She confirmed it was a real, newly hatched cygnet with Celine by her side. Crouching down, she and Celine wondered if the little swan was lost or if its mother was nearby. The frightened little swan looked up, and onlookers noted its fear. Celine panicked, realizing the only other swans here, Lord Leamington and his wife, had just been fighting and were unlikely to have a child. Catherine mused that the lake was far from peaceful, as the animal residents were quite wild without human constraints. She decided against asking the formidable Lord Leamington about the baby, fearing it would only make it cry. She suddenly declared with passion that they must act like calm, responsible adults to avoid traumatizing the baby swan. Celine smirked, pointing out that Catherine seemed to be the most excited one, which she sheepishly admitted. Catherine was ecstatic, thinking she had finally found the baby she had dreamed of. After all, it had been so long. She blushed happily, fawning over the baby swan, much to the duckling's confusion. Catherine decided to take the baby to a nearby field at sunset to find its family. Her hope turned to fear when Celine warned that wild dogs frequented that field and the baby wouldn't survive the night alone. Catherine decisively and gently picked up the baby swan as Celine watched. Cradling the baby swan, Catherine sent Celine away to handle her afternoon chores. Catherine sighed, accepting that her day off was over, and decided to care for the baby herself. Back at the mansion, she nervously peeked inside the room, checking if anyone was around. She gently placed the baby swan on a large pillow, apologizing for her overexcitement. Overwhelmed with joy, Catherine doted on the adorable baby swan, playfully flopping onto the bed. Sitting beside the baby, she gently asked the little one where its mother might have gone. Catherine looked lovingly at the sweet, red-eyed baby swan. She admired its eyes, which sparkled like rubies, bright and clear, making her want to kiss them. She was puzzled by its red eyes, noting that since it couldn't talk, it probably wasn't a cursed human. She concluded that since the child couldn't speak, it must be a real animal. Suddenly, she had an idea, deciding the baby swan's unusual eye color must be a genetic mutation. Catherine sat gracefully on the floor, gently holding the little white swan in her hands. Looking down at the small creature, she whispered, "Can I be your mommy?" She reflected on her lonely existence, both as a swan on the lake and a human in the empty villa. Catherine watched the drowsy baby swan with a gentle smile, noting its understandable exhaustion. She drew the curtains, letting the baby swan nap in her quiet room. As her swan shadow was cast behind her, she marveled that another of her wishes had come true. She lay beside the sleeping baby, feeling very content with her life by the lake. As a black swan, she slept peacefully, curled protectively around the little white baby swan. The black swan woke to find the baby swan stirring contentedly under her wing. "You're awake?" she thought playfully, wondering when the little swan had snuggled so close. The baby swan gazed up at her adoringly, filling Catherine's heart with warm, motherly love. Just as Catherine was soothing the baby, it suddenly spoke, calling out, "Mommy." Catherine was too shocked to speak, staring at the little swan as she processed what she had just heard. When the baby eagerly asked if she was its mommy, Catherine was struck by the realization, "You're human." The scene shifts to the Imperial Palace of the Rohan Empire. The Grand Palace is brilliantly lit against the night sky. Inside the palace, a shocked second Prince Carol questioned the fourth Prince Tenon about what had happened, worried about how to explain it to the Emperor. With a creak, the two princes stood nervously before a large door. The door opened to reveal a mysterious figure in a red cloak and full armor, to whom all the officials bowed. The armored figure began to speak, capturing Prince Carol's full attention. He removed his helmet to reveal his face, a handsome blonde man who said he had heard an interesting story on his way back. Carol and Tenon stammered, "Your Majesty," how? Clearly intimidated by his presence. The Emperor's eyes glowed red as he sarcastically asked if they found it amusing that he was the only one left in the dark. With an icy gaze, he demanded a detailed report on everything immediately. Tenon reported that after a person named Rome visited Haniel's palace, they both disappeared. He went on to explain that Rome had dismissed the staff for privacy, and now no one knew where he and Haniel had gone. The Emperor flew into a rage, berating Tenon and reminding him that he was sent to guard, not to desert his post. Tenon explained that he had withdrawn the guards because the child, Haniel, was frightened, but the Emperor was silently furious at the weak excuse. Carol tried to placate his angry brother, assuring him that a magical artifact in Haniel's room called a pulsing stone showed no alarm. He explained that the orb, a gift from their late mother, would turn black if Haniel was in danger, which proved she was safe. The Emperor sneered skeptically, asking if they were betting the child's life on a broken stone. Useless trash, he thought, utterly disgusted by his brother's incompetence. The princes discussed the elusive Rome, who had suddenly appeared to see Haniel and then vanished with her without a trace. The Emperor listened to the report with a cold, calculating expression. Carol recalled how Rome had defied orders years ago by refusing to inherit his title, lamenting his increasingly erratic and now dangerous behavior. The Emperor ordered his mages to track Rome immediately before the magical trail vanished completely. The Emperor stated confidently that Rome couldn't have crossed the border with the child yet, and Tenon affirmed he would carry out the search. Carol raised a critical point. Since Haniel had never appeared in public, almost no one knew what she looked like. The Emperor roared at them in fury. "What kind of brothers are you?" All they had was a vague image of Haniel as a young child in a yellow dress, holding a teddy bear. The Emperor desperately demanded a straight answer, asking for her age. The princes sweated nervously, unable to even recall the child's age. A promotional image showed the dark-haired Catherine wearing a red rose, announcing that a new chapter was now available. The little swan excitedly recognized her as its mother, and Catherine became certain the child was a genuinely cursed person. Catherine angrily wondered if Rania had cursed these children too, and the baby swan's feathers bristled at the name Rania, as the little one stammered and lowered its head, tears in its eyes. She speculated on why Rania would curse them, wondering if it was because they had opposed the princess, then cut off the thought, deciding not to press the issue, thinking, forget it. "That's enough," she sighed, realizing she couldn't expect a frightened baby to explain a complex situation. "I wish you weren't so cute," Catherine thought, completely charmed, as the baby swan flapped its wings, counting 3, 4. When Catherine asked for its parents' names, the baby replied, "Daddy." "Daddy is in heaven." Hearing this tragic news, Catherine could only stammer, I see." The baby innocently described heaven, making Catherine realize the little one didn't truly understand the meaning of her father's death. The little swan cheerfully announced, "Mommy is here," and Catherine readily accepted her new role. The baby exclaimed happily that her brother Rome was right after all. Her mommy really was in the land of the lake. Brother Rome? Who is this Rome? Catherine asked, and the baby chirped back, "Fifth brother." The little swan cheered that her brother Rome was the best, which left the black swan stunned. Catherine's mind raced, realizing the story sounded disturbingly familiar, and wondered if she was trapped in that novel. She stammered, asking the baby if she had other brothers, and the little one happily confirmed she had many. Catherine broke into a sweat, desperately trying to deny the familiar story, thinking it couldn't be true. She recalled the plot of an unusual novel she had once read, where the male lead married 13 times and killed 12 of his wives. Her memory continued to surface, recalling another strange setup in the novel. The female lead had a flock of older brothers. Catherine hopefully asked the baby if she had any sisters, hoping for a different answer. Appreciating the little one's firm will, Catherine asked just how many brothers she had. Catherine panicked, thinking that more than 5 brothers would be absurd unless it was that story. As the baby counted to 5, she inwardly prayed for it to stop. The baby swan cheerfully announced she had 7 older brothers, leaving Catherine utterly stunned. The cute little swan sat happily among pink flowers. A thought struck Catherine, and she asked if her name was really Haniel, which the baby swan confirmed. Catherine quickly refused the offer to hear her brothers' names, deciding it was useless since she wouldn't know them anyway. The baby swan asked what was wrong with Mommy, while a nervous Catherine began to ask about the eldest brother. Catherine's worst fears were confirmed as an image of Haniel's eldest brother, the infamous red-eyed tyrant emperor, flashed in her mind. The title of the story was revealed: The Little Princess in the Log Cabin, as the scene showed a young, red-eyed Haniel waving outside a small log cabin. The narration explained the poor female lead's backstory. She lost her parents and was raised by 7 older brothers who couldn't care less about her. The tragic story continued, describing how the neglected and ostracized princess was eventually exiled, a tale that had brought readers to tears. Catherine reflected on the novel, lamenting that this cruel reality was far worse than her initial expectations of a little sister story. She recalled how the princess's brothers would even kill people in front of her, but she bravely survived thanks to her protagonist's halo and saved a foreign prince. As the novel's love story unfolded, the princess was captured on false charges, and the prince came to her rescue, a plot Catherine found mediocre. The baby swan's cry of "Mommy" pulled Catherine back to reality, and she realized there was a reason she remembered this particular story. She remembered the novel's premise. The 7 brothers were devised to emphasize how severely the little princess was neglected. A family portrait from her memory showed that all the brothers were the extremely selfish people she remembered them to be. She recalled the details of the eldest brother, a bloodthirsty tyrant and warmonger known as the Lord of Darkness. Catherine sighed in disgust and frustration. She recalled the novel's brutal climax. The male lead, enraged by her abuse, killed all of her brothers and burned the kingdom to the ground. The story ended in tragedy, with the female lead becoming empress, but living like a sad, caged bird under the male lead's paranoid protection. Catherine reflected on this sad ending, knowing the empress could never be happy with her homeland reduced to ashes. As the baby swan called for its mommy, Catherine realized with horror that the story hadn't even started yet, and Haniel had already been turned into a bird. Catherine gently covered the little one with her wing, asking how she had become like this. Startled by her own outburst, Catherine suddenly snapped at the baby, insisting she was not its mother. She flapped in a panic, feathers flying everywhere, while the little white swan watched, sad and confused. She immediately regretted her words, wondering if she had been too harsh, while also questioning what right she had to be the baby's mother. She began to waddle away from the baby swan. Catherine's human side sighed, thinking the child was impossibly cute even when mistaking her for someone else. She panicked internally, desperately thinking she couldn't be labeled a kidnapper. Catherine softened her tone and denied being the mother again, leading a confused Haniel to ask, "You're not my mommy?" Catherine grew impatient, flapping her wings and demanding to know if Haniel couldn't see their feathers were different colors. In a split-screen view, she sharply pointed out their difference. I'm black and you're white. Catherine spread her wings, trying to emphasize how completely different they were. When Catherine finished making her point, the little swan's eyes shone with adoration, making her wonder, what? The baby swan snuggled up to her cheerfully, announcing it knew all along. Well, Catherine felt this was going to drive her crazy. In a field of dandelions, Haniel excitedly called out, "Mommy," but Catherine wearily insisted she was not its mother. When Haniel claimed they looked alike, Catherine pointed to her own beak, arguing that even the color was different. The baby swan sadly lowered its head, silently accepting the correction. Catherine mused that they looked nothing alike, relieved that at least the different colors would prevent any mistaken identity. As a swan, she shook her head vigorously, thinking, absolutely not. Catherine realized with panic that Haniel was destined to face that paranoid tyrant of a brother, feeling she couldn't handle someone else's melodrama on top of her own curse. But pity won over reason, and she embraced the little swan, deciding Haniel deserved to at least live a normal human life. A duck named Celine rushed over, asking why Catherine looked so pale. Catherine told the confused baby swan, Haniel, to step aside so the adults could talk. Catherine decided internally that Haniel deserved better, while Celine asked if she wanted to discuss it privately. Catherine asked if she knew anything about His Majesty, which startled Celine. The Emperor, in her human form, Catherine was exasperated by Celine's extreme fear at just hearing the Emperor's name. Celine reminded Catherine that she was the one who had asked for the Emperor's name and then refused to hear it, making Catherine stammer in embarrassment. Catherine defended herself, lamenting that she didn't know he was the female lead's brother when she refused the information. When Catherine asked if his name was Rashid Panoa III, a majestic image of the Emperor appeared, and Celine confirmed it, still confused. Catherine asked if the Emperor was really that terrifying, but Celine insisted he had doubled the Empire's territory, leading Catherine to conclude he was a warmonger. Celine explained that the Emperor used to frequent the Winter Palace as Crown Prince, which was the late Empress's favorite villa. In the northern region, Catherine imagined the magnificent Winter Palace with a melancholic expression. Celine said the Emperor had no reason to go there now, but Catherine pressed, asking, "Doesn't he have a younger sister?" Celine, shocked by Catherine's ignorance, exclaimed that Haniel is the Empire's one and only precious princess. Celine mentioned that the late Emperor had many siblings and that his parents had a good relationship. Catherine looked at Haniel, thinking that the child was innocent. Catherine wondered why Haniel wasn't receiving special treatment, speculating if she was an illegitimate child or half-sister. Celine clarified that the late Emperor had no concubines, which greatly shocked Catherine, who realized Haniel was the Emperor's full-blooded younger sister. Celine explained that Haniel was supposed to be named an Imperial Princess at the age of 2, but rumors said she was sick or even dead. Catherine suddenly burst out, shouting, "Who's dead?" startling Celine. Catherine's thoughts turned affectionate as she admired Haniel's perfect webbed feet and cute little beak. Seeing Catherine so agitated, Celine asked if something was wrong, but Catherine quickly covered it up. In her human form, Catherine speculated that since the Emperor was busy with war, perhaps someone else had taken Haniel to raise her. Celine told a horrifying story about how the Emperor had once burned a kidnapper alive, her casual tone chilling Catherine. Celine asked Catherine what she planned to do with her now, since it seemed no one knew who she was. With a determined look in her eyes, Catherine resolved to find Haniel's guardian. The scene then shifts to the Grand Hall, where Emperor Rashid coldly demands a report from his younger brother. Tenon reported that Rome had bewildered the maids, who had now lost their memories, and the Emperor cruelly ordered their execution. The Emperor coldly questioned the value of keeping servants who no longer remembered anything useful. With a threatening gaze, he scoffed that servants who had lost their master and were useless did not deserve to live. Carol cautiously reminded his older brother that when Haniel returned, someone would be needed to care for her. A flashback shows Haniel as a small, fragile child in a pretty dress, clutching her stuffed toy. The narration reveals that everyone, even her brothers in her childhood, shirked the responsibility of caring for her. Carol remembered the only person who had ever approached Haniel was. At which point the Emperor on the throne fell into deep thought. The Emperor thought, "What have I done?" Carol quickly changed the subject, saying it was nothing, while fearfully recalling how his eldest brother had treated the newborn Haniel. In a flashback, a courtier explains the news of the queen's death to the armored emperor, who asks coolly, "Is that the child?" As the blood-splattered emperor approached the cradle, A young Carol desperately pleaded with him not to do anything rash. The Emperor emotionlessly poked the baby's cheek, asking if she was dead. When the baby started to cry, the Emperor watched her coldly. "She's alive. That's enough," the Emperor declared, leaving Carol to handle the rest before turning to leave. Carol begged him to at least follow tradition and bestow a name upon the child. The Emperor paused briefly, casually naming her Haniel, before continuing on his way. Carol felt a sense of despair, realizing his brother had named the princess after their late mother's pet. Back in the present, Emperor Rashid pressed on about what he had done wrong, while Carol thought he was showing unexpected persistence. Carol explained that Haniel was introverted and a late talker, a fact that confused and shocked the clueless emperor. The emperor demanded to know when Haniel would speak properly, terrifying his younger brothers. Tenon suggested a cruel method. Perhaps tossing Haniel around would scare her into speaking, just as it had worked on Haran and Aaron. The emperor erupted with a terrifying aura, roaring at Tenon. "You call that a method?" The emperor seemed to fall into thought, while Carol watched him with a pained and weary expression. Carol nervously reassured him that she would eventually speak, but the emperor angrily cut him off, telling him to shut up. A new character appears. Peyton, the stern knight commander of the Southern Territory. Peyton reported finding traces of Rome, indicating he had passed through the central region a week ago. Seated on his throne, Emperor Rashid deduced that Rome must have headed north. "No, that won't do." With a chilling smile, surrounded by glowing blue roses, the emperor decided to end this himself. This is bad." His younger brothers recoiled in terror, recalling that the last time he wore that smile, an entire country had disappeared. A voice calls out to the little one, and the scene shifts to a garden reflected in a shimmering pond. Catherine, in her black swan form, beckoned the little signet over, but Haniel asked hopefully, "Mommy?" Catherine's human form became flustered, awkwardly insisting she was just telling the child to come here. Back in her swan form, Catherine gently told Haniel where to sit, and the little one happily agreed. As Haniel sat down, Catherine gave a nod of approval, while her human side marveled at how cute the baby was. Catherine firmly told Haniel she was not her mother, leading the sad baby to ask where her real mommy was. Catherine worried about revealing her name, fearing the terrifying emperor would have her boiled for impersonating a royal relative. Haniel looked up at her, cutely mispronouncing Black Swan. Catherine patiently corrected the baby, telling her she could just call her Black Swan. The Black Swan began to question Haniel, asking how she got here, where she lived, and if she remembered who brought her. Catherine was impressed by Haniel's sharpness, thinking that if Haniel was the protagonist, she must be a max-level supporting character. To help her think, the Black Swan conjured a sparkling, fish-shaped cookie for the little signet. Haniel's eyes filled with hearts as she nibbled on the treat, exclaiming how delicious it was. Catherine was pleased, thinking proudly that since she had been a professional zookeeper, of course it tasted good. After finishing the treat, Haniel happily answered the Black Swan's questions, simply saying that she lived in the palace. Haniel wiggled excitedly, explaining that her brother Rome had carried her out in a tight hug. Haniel imagined Rome as a dashing magician, explaining that he could make flowers bloom and that she grew wings when he held her, which made Catherine wonder why the brother was a magician while she was a swan. As Haniel continued to gush about how fun her brother Rome was, Catherine sat by and observed how much the princess adored him. Upon hearing there were more brothers, the Black Swan was horrified and erupted in a flurry of feathers, begging Haniel not to mention them again. Catherine angrily clenched her fist, wondering what terrible things the other brothers had done to make Haniel cry just from hearing their names. Haniel cried as she ate, recounting that her brother had told her that mommy would be in the lake country. The Black Swan's heart softened, and she promised to help Haniel find her brother Rome, an offer that made the little Signet's eyes light up. Through her tears, Haniel said that Rome had promised to bring her a chocolate cake if she just waited. When asked where to wait, Haniel admitted she didn't know, but said she got scared and followed the blackbird to the lake country. Catherine seethed with anger, realizing Rome's promise was the most common lie used when abandoning a child. Realizing time was short, Catherine announced she had no time to comfort Haniel, as the golden window for finding a missing child was only 72 hours. Outside with Celine, Catherine dodged the duck questions about leaving, defensively asking why she would leave. When Celine suggested waiting, Catherine retorted painfully that if waiting could bring back family, neither of them would be alone. With new resolve, Catherine stated that waiting was futile and they had to leave immediately to find Haniel's brother. Catherine reasoned they had just missed her brother at the cake shop and eagerly demanded the map Celine had prepared. The duck proudly presented a map, which Catherine snatched with a determined look in her eyes. Celine explained the map was from the kitchen, but was suddenly distracted by the delicious fish cookie. The duck marveled at the cookie's taste, wondering how it could be so different from raw fish. Catherine smugly explained that the quality came from her 10 years of experience in the animal feed industry in her past life. Celine praised her skills, but Catherine lamented that her past life bonus was just animal care, not something cooler like medicine or foresight. Catherine examined the map of the large town, listening as Celine explained it was a major trade hub on the route to Levant. It dawned on Catherine that the male lead in the novel was the heir to the kingdom of Levant. Realizing this was how Haniel would meet him. Watching Haniel toddle among the flowers, Catherine thought that if the child were a bit older, she could play matchmaker, but then worried about the Emperor's wrath. She knelt by the map and asked Celine to point out the dessert shops. Celine identified 3 shops and offered to take them to the closest one, but Catherine firmly refused. Catherine decisively pointed to the farthest shop on the map, leaving Celine baffled by her choice. She explained her logic. Haniel had followed the migratory birds, and this route was the only one with the plains and wetlands they needed to rest. Celine was impressed by her deduction, exclaiming how amazing Catherine was, though Catherine humbly waved it off. Catherine, dressed in a dark traveling cloak, announced they had to leave immediately before it got dark. Celine expressed surprise, admitting she thought Catherine would raise the little signet herself, a thought that startled Catherine. Catherine stiffly and formally refused, stating that Haniel had a family and they were strangers, which prompted Celine to comment that she spoke like she was reading from a textbook. Catherine coldly insisted she had no interest in Haniel, pushing them away as strangers, while Celine popped out of the water to ask why. As a panicked, chibi version of Catherine appears, Celine's voice calls out to the little one. The scene switches to Emperor Rashid and his cloaked younger brothers on horseback. He dismissed a subordinate's concern, saying he was tired of being asked if he was all right. The emperor looked down from a cliff at the vast town, calmly commenting that 3 years had passed. In a merged scene, a subordinate asks if His Majesty is all right, and the emperor waves it off, gazing at the distant city and noting that 3 years have passed. An aide's voice explains that the late queen had indeed stayed in this villa while pregnant with Haniel, confirming it has been over 3 years. Carol scolded Tenon for using the title Your Majesty, warning it would reveal their location, which prompted a hurried apology. Carol then enthusiastically suggested that since they were here, the emperor should meet Princess Rania. The emperor asked curtly why, so Carol suggested paying condolences for the late duke's funeral, adding that she might soon rule the north. Carol explained that the princess was acting as lord because the stepmother duchess was not in power, which surprised the emperor, who pressed a no when the duke had remarried. The emperor scoffed at the idea of a deathbed marriage, questioning its purpose. He then wondered angrily why the princess was involved in politics instead of her stepmother. Carol revealed the stepmother had a bad reputation and was rumored to be a witch, making the emperor wonder what she had done to earn such a title. Riding beside his younger brother, the emperor sternly told Carol to stop meddling while his own sister was still missing. The emperor gravely asked Carol if the mages were still tracking Haniel's location. In a flashback about their mother, the emperor explained he had turned a blind eye to Rome's actions because their mother had requested that one child be allowed to live freely. He grimly noted that while Rome could escape, Haniel was different and could easily become an irretrievable hostage. A nervous Tenon called out to his eldest brother as Carol stood beside him holding a glowing magical device. The emperor asked if the location was certain, and Carol confirmed they had tracked Rome's magical signature from the temple, so it should be accurate. As the 3 brothers rode toward the castle gates, Carol vowed to find them here, dead or alive. Arriving in the same town, Catherine checked her map and then sighed romantically at the beautiful architecture. She let out a sigh of relief, thinking she never would have made it here if she hadn't asked for directions from a friendly white wolf she met. Catherine grumbled to herself, wondering if life would be easier as a black swan, since her human body felt so clumsy. She contemplated the freedom of being a swan, free from the stress of dealing with people. But after seeing a dessert shop window filled with delicious delicious cakes. Her train of thought completely derailed, and she instantly took back her words. With new purpose and sparkling eyes, Catherine cheerfully celebrated the benefits of being human. She firmly concluded that no matter how good a swan's life was, only humans could enjoy sweet treats. Catherine strode forward with purpose, deciding to go inside and ask about the child-abandoning criminal, Rome. She tapped the shoulder of an irritated-looking, orange-haired woman to ask a question. The woman angrily berated Catherine for cutting in line, pointing to the long queue of people outside the shop. Catherine froze, finding herself facing the collective glare of an entire line of impatient women. The orange-haired woman dismissed her, saying everyone had been waiting since dawn, and asked if Catherine thought they had nothing better to do. The woman proudly announced that this shop had won the grand prize at the Rohan Dessert Fair, her tone flamboyant. A flustered Catherine claimed she didn't know, but the woman scoffed, saying that those who were truly desperate would have lined up the night before. Catherine panicked, thinking she couldn't wait in line because, as a swan, she'd likely be eaten. For a moment, Catherine considered ending the argument by revealing she was the duchess. But she quickly dismissed the thought, remembering her goal was to avoid ruining her reputation in this region. Catherine recalled the terrible rumors about her being a cruel witch who married a dying duke for his fortune. Just then, the emperor and his brothers arrived, one of them pointing out that this was the place, while the emperor wondered why they were at a bakery. Seeing the long line, the emperor mused that the shop must be quite good, and Carol explained it had been recommended. A polite, "Excuse me," cut through the crowd. With a sweet smile, Catherine parted the crowd and walked toward the three cloaked men. The three brothers froze as Catherine appeared before them, and someone in the crowd confirmed this was the place they were looking for. The three brothers were utterly confused by the sudden appearance of the cloaked woman. Catherine asked if they were looking for the award-winning shop, and the emperor stammered that he supposed so. Catherine smiled pleasantly and told him to get in line, prompting a bewildered Carol to ask, "Excuse me?" With a smile that didn't reach her eyes, Catherine calmly repeated her instruction, "I said get in line." She cheerfully pointed to some children, noting that even they knew to wait their turn. As Catherine praised the children's manners, the three royal brothers fumed silently behind her. Their anger was palpable. Catherine adjusted her hood, observing the men and thinking their ignorant behavior was strange for people seeking a famous shop. As the three brothers muttered angrily, Catherine glanced back, wondering if the line was getting longer or shorter. In line, a brown-haired woman complained about the cold, while her friend pointed out that everyone was waiting, including the lady in the black cloak. The two children from before were now terrified, staring at the three sinister, cloaked men behind Catherine, the boy whimpering in fear. Catherine turned to the children and reassured them not to worry about the man, prompting the boy to ask how she could be so sure. Catherine winked with a comforting smile and explained her simple philosophy. There are no truly bad people among those who love cake. As a bell chimed, Catherine and the children watched the bakery door open. A woman in a baker's uniform stepped out and announced to the murmuring crowd that the cakes for the day were sold out, much to everyone's disappointment. An indignant Catherine demanded how they could be sold out when there were clearly cakes inside, but the baker explained they were all reserved. Shielding the children, Catherine challenged the baker, stating she had heard the shop didn't take reservations. The baker smugly clarified that the desserts were specially ordered for afternoon tea by Princess Rebecca of the Northern Ivandel family. As the crowd murmured about the royal family, the baker scolded Catherine for daring to covet items belonging to someone so noble. The baker impatiently shooed Catherine and the crowd away, telling them to leave at once. As Catherine stepped forward, one of the brothers urged the emperor to stay calm, worried they'd be discovered, but she insisted they weren't finished. Catherine advanced on the startled baker, coldly commenting that the shop's etiquette was worse than a street vendor's. Leaning in menacingly, Catherine demanded the baker repeat himself, and he nervously stammered that Princess Rebecca had ordered everything. Catherine removed her hood to reveal her face and calmly introduced herself, stunning the baker with a single sentence. I am Rebecca's mother." The unhood Catherine stood before the baker as the crowd, including the 3 cloaked brothers, that watched from a distance. The crowd erupted in whispers, shocked by the possibility that this woman could be the duchess. The 3 royal brothers watched in disbelief, and the emperor breathed a single word: "Sister." Catherine coldly reminded the baker what he had just said, questioning how anyone in the north could not know the Ivandel family. As the baker trembled, Catherine glared at him and asked with chilling intensity if she really looked insane. The terrified baker frantically denied it, so Catherine told him to call her residence if he needed confirmation. She delivered a final, terrifying threat. If her identity was confirmed, he was finished for the day. With a clatter, the frightened baker scrambled back into the shop. The baker hastily packed various exquisite cakes into a box and bowed deeply. The baker handed the pink cake box to Catherine, who accepted it with a smile, praising it as an excellent choice. Holding the box, Catherine confirmed it was the chocolate cake she had mentioned, while the boy behind her whispered in awe that she really was a witch. The boy's older sister forced him into a deep bow, apologizing profusely to the lady for his ignorant and rude behavior. She accepted the apology, but gently chided the girl for being out in the cold. Catherine draped her own dark cloak over the shivering girl's shoulders. Catherine waved goodbye, telling the children to eat the cake and hurry home before it got too late. She turned with a sly smile, noticing that one person remained and that they hadn't left. As she walked away from the shop, she turned to face the emperor who had called out to her. Catherine offered the cake box to the emperor, admitting she had planned to share some with him even if he hadn't been staring. As she handed over the box, she smiled and explained that she had her principles. The younger brothers snatched the box with surprising speed, making Catherine marvel at how fast their hands were. Realizing she needed them to leave so she could ask the manager about Rome, Catherine sent the expedition team on their way home. One of the brothers, holding the box, asked what she planned to do now, to which she simply replied, "Me?" She gave a bright, casual smile and said she had a few things to take care of. The emperor looked up at the sky and suddenly realized with a jolt that it was already dark. Catherine felt the signs of her transformation back into a black swan and panicked, realizing there was no time to ask about Rome. Desperate to find a hidden place to escape, she tried to run, but the emperor called for her to wait. As she stumbled, the emperor asked if she was really who he thought she was, but she frantically told him to get out of her way. As black feathers began to appear, Catherine pushed the emperor away, snapping that his joke wasn't funny. The emperor watched with a look of shock and concern as his brother called his name. Catherine ran across the street, thinking she needed something sweet to lift her spirits, and hoping no one saw her eating cake. His younger brothers reported that they had lost her, but the emperor angrily told them to shut up. Holding the pink cake box, the emperor thought grimly that he would have preferred the head of an enemy general. The other 2 brothers watched nervously as the emperor sighed and gripped the dessert box. With a crunch, the emperor crushed the pink cake box in his gloved hand. His anger was palpable as he dropped the ruined box, and the 2 cloaked brothers watched in stunned silence. The emperor declared he had no interest in meddling, but had to know if a witch truly lived in his territory, while his white-haired brother watched with concern. Arriving at the lake, the black swan was met by a worried duck who asked why she was back so late, to which the swan sighed that it was a long story. The duck asked about the child, and another reported that the child had clammed up and refused to speak as soon as the swan left. Suddenly, a small white cygnet named Haniel looked up at the black swan and shyly called out, "Mommy." Haniel flapped her wings and waddled toward the black swan, repeating, "Mommy." The little duck explained that the child wouldn't eat and only called for her, but when the swan insisted on feeding her, the little duck said they had even asked Lady Mello for help. The black swan was horrified, demanding to know why on earth they had left the baby with Lady Mello. A flashback introduces Lady Mello, a goose who was once a companion to Rania, a woman bent on remarrying the former duke. Lady Mello's past image was that of an old woman, remembered for her rigid advice on maintaining dignity, which ultimately drove Rania to the lake. The little duck explained Lady Mello's admirable belief. For a goose, to abandon a noble mindset meant becoming a mere beast. The black swan shrieked in anger, while the little duck nervously asked if she had really gone to the dessert shop in town. The swan reflected internally that she couldn't mention the shop being closed, as she had shared the cake with the children and those mysterious brothers. Back in human form, Catherine shivered at the image of the Emperor, wondering why she felt a chill even as a swan. She blushed, wondering if she was flustered by the man's informal speech simply because he was handsome. Catherine recalled the man's sturdy build and concluded his lack of reaction meant he either didn't believe she was the Duchess or there was some other reason. The black swan preened her feathers, wondering if she had been too friendly, as the confused little duck watched her. Catherine blushed, convinced the man to whom she had shown kindness had shown romantic interest, a feeling she believed she could recognize. Seeing two figures approaching in the distance, the black swan's expression suddenly became highly focused. The swan ordered the little duck named Celine to take the child and hide, and to find Lady Mello if Celine couldn't handle it alone. As Celine protested, a woman in a red dress and another with white hair appeared, the latter noting that her daughters were unusually late for once. The woman in red yanked a rope around the swan's neck, dragging her forward as the swan struggled and demanded to be let go. The swan was unceremoniously dragged by the rope toward a grand estate. The woman in red glared at the swan, angrily demanding that she speak. The swan glared back defiantly, thinking the woman wouldn't listen anyway. The swan lunged at her captor, vowing to break her wrist, which made the woman scream that she was insane. The woman in red dared the swan to try, while the white-haired woman watched coldly. The woman in red lost her nerve, stammering sister, her aggressive posture gone. The white-haired woman calmly reminded her sister to maintain her dignity, silencing her protests. Then she turned to the swan with a pleasant smile and asked, "Isn't that right, mother?" A brilliant light of transformation enveloped the struggling black swan. The two women watched as the transformation completed. The white-haired woman asked what was happening, while the newly transformed Catherine thought it was useless to explain now. Catherine, human again and sitting in a dark dress, wondered why she had transformed when it was still night. The narration explains that the glowing windows contain Aluna, a magical item that stores sunlight, possessed only by the Lord of the North. The white-haired woman held the Aluna, condescendingly telling Catherine not to covet things that a lowly person could not have. The white-haired woman was amused that the Aluna was working, but was interrupted by her sister Rania, who angrily asked what she was doing. Rania accused Catherine of sneaking into the city either to humiliate the ducal family, or to run away. Rania angrily pointed at her sister Rebecca, saying Catherine had the audacity to claim to be her mother. Rebecca and Rania looked down on Catherine, the so-called Duchess. Catherine stood up and accused them of setting a trap, but Rebecca simply asked why she went to the dessert shop. Catherine retorted with a sneer, "What else would a woman in her 20s be doing at a dessert shop?" This made Rebecca blush. Catherine angrily suggested Rebecca should try a diet of only raw fish for a while. Rebecca coldly threatened that if Catherine's goal was to humiliate the family, her neck would be broken and she'd be buried in a swamp. She then warned Catherine that another such act would cause her eldest daughter, Rania, to lose all her titles. In the standoff, Catherine reaffirmed to herself that although she was treated like a puppet, she was still the Duchess of Ivandel, possessing great wealth and power. Catherine apologized and promised to be more careful. The first time Rebecca called her Catherine, she smiled with predatory ecstasy, baring her fangs and asking what Catherine was so afraid of, questioning what she could possibly do in the span of half a day. Rebecca lifted Catherine's chin to taunt her, asking what was wrong, since she would surely come crawling back before being caught by the hunters. Rebecca lifted Catherine's chin and threateningly told her to stop acting nice. Rebecca thought angrily to herself that rumors of a half-mad, which would tarnish her bid to inherit the North, while Catherine wondered what had become of her daughter. As Rebecca flashed a chillingly ecstatic smile, Catherine realized her daughter was truly mad and couldn't be reasoned with at all. Rebecca coldly stated she wasn't interested in that position and that this incident would be overlooked, which made Catherine flinch. Rebecca thought smugly that she certainly wasn't the one causing trouble. Rebecca's smile turned extremely sinister, causing Rania to shrink back in shock. Rebecca mused that while she had to keep her mother alive, she didn't have to keep her intact. When Catherine retorted that the lawyer was about to arrive, Rebecca dismissed it. She leaned in close, continuing to torment Catherine with a cruelly threatening smile. Rebecca whispered that not all wounds show on the outside, leaving Catherine to guess in terror what she was plotting. Suddenly, Rebecca's expression shifted to a bright, almost cheerful smile. She then ordered Rania to go to the kitchen and get all the snacks, intending to cruelly stuff them all into their mother's mouth. When a horrified Rania questioned the order, Rebecca asked if she was curious and threatened to feed her first. Rania reluctantly agreed and hurried off to the kitchen. Reaching the door, Rania was annoyed to find the birds blocking her path, sarcastically mentioning their loyalty before telling them to move. When one of the geese lunged forward, Catherine screamed for it to stop, but Rebecca held her back. With a thud, Rebecca viciously yanked Catherine's hair, pulling her head back with a cruel smile. Rania returned, surprised to see Rebecca still there, and asked why she hadn't left. Rania then turned to look toward the bright daylight at the door. Rebecca stared with a cold and calculating intensity. Thump! Catherine was thrown to the floor, and Rebecca looked down at her, telling her she was lucky. Rebecca then roughly grabbed Rania's arm and told her to get out of the way. With another sudden shift, Rebecca clasped her hands with a serene smile, leaving Catherine on the floor bewildered by the sight. As Catherine staggered to her feet, she saw her daughters looking toward the winter palace in the distance, now lit up against the night sky. A faint smile touched Catherine's lips as she quietly wondered what had happened, thinking to herself that she must be really lucky. The scene shifts to the grand Ivandel estate on a sunny day. Inside, the emperor sat on a gilded chair, silencing an aide who was giving a report. The aide then turned to the two princes, instructing them not to act rashly, as the emperor wished to look around quietly, and said he would have their rooms prepared. The emperor glared impatiently at the aide, repeating that he had said enough, and demanded to know if everyone had been informed of his arrival. The aide presented a formal invitation, confirming it bore the crest of the Ivandel family. The emperor smirked as he held the invitation, an image of Catherine forming in his mind as he thought that it all fit together perfectly. Back with Catherine, she gently adjusted a ribbon on one of the ducks, scolding it for not hiding well and causing a commotion. She smoothed the duck's feathers, commenting that its timing was excellent. Looking toward the estate, Catherine realized that Haniel's older brother had arrived, which meant they only had to return the seal and wouldn't have to find Rome. She worried that the biggest obstacle would be convincing the brother that this little signet was Haniel, but she decided she could simply claim to have seen him cast the spell with her own eyes. Her resolve firmed as she thought that once she returned the child, this whole ordeal would finally be over. Suddenly, she encountered the goose Lady Mello, who formally greeted the Duchess. Catherine feigned surprise, asking Lady Mello why she was greeting her, as she thought the goose was wary. The goose simply replied that it knew Catherine would be wary. Catherine smiled and asked what it meant. Lady Mallow stated that it knew the Duchess would visit at least once, which Catherine quietly acknowledged. Catherine offered a backhanded compliment, commenting that age was no barrier to grace and that the goose was looking well. The goose looked unconvinced, and Catherine, sweating slightly, pressed on, asking if it really believed that. Lady Mallow confidently stated its deduction that Catherine must be of high birth, recalling the day it found her. The goose puffed out its chest proudly, adding that they had even hired a new teacher for the new students. Regarding the new student, Catherine internally scoffed at how ridiculous it was, sarcastically thinking they must have recruited some pushover migratory bird as the new teacher. A sly smile appeared on her face as she realized she had found the right person to manipulate. After a moment of thought under the clear sky, she murmured in understanding, "So that's how it is." Catherine gave the waddling goose a perfect curtsy, saying with false sincerity that she had learned many useful things from Lady Milo. She then warned the staggering Lady Milo not to overexert herself and faint. Worried that it might fall, Catherine, with a sinister smile, tempted the goose with a vision of delicious cake, slyly asking if indulging in food really turns one into a beast. Lady Mello suggested that the Duchess herself should conduct an inspection to boost the new students' morale, to which Catherine feigned confusion. The scene shifts to a tense night, with Lady Mello harshly scolding the little cygnets, demanding they swallow their cries because hunters were nearby. As the black swan watched angrily, Lady Mello screamed that she was a mean old hag, while an anxious Celine urged her to hold on. Lady Mello wondered how a swan could be so awful, adding it was no wonder Rana had cursed her. Celine then pointed out that Catherine was just as bad. Celine argued that Haniel was learning crucial survival skills, but the swan angrily retorted, asking who said the little signet was alone. The swan questioned if Celine knew of Haniel's powerful family, while Catherine's human form lamented being unable to raise the child herself. Celine comforted her that the trouble wouldn't last long, but the Swan internally disagreed, thinking that wasn't it at all. Celine sharply asked the Swan if she was avoiding sending the little signet away simply because it was too much trouble. Under the beautiful starry sky, the Swan warned Celine that showing careless affection would make the little signet become fixated on her for the rest of its life. Catherine explained that her brief kindness would become an obsession for the little signet, who would forever wonder when she would return. A flashback revealed a young, lonely Catherine, realizing the signet's longing was just like her own past. Catherine coldly told Celine that, having had parents, she could never understand such a feeling, and concluded that temporary mercy would only confuse the little signet. Catherine refused to act merely to soothe her conscience, but Celine argued that her concern was not half-hearted. A chibi version of Catherine appeared, thinking that Celine was only sharp when it came to these things. The Swan wondered what Lady Mello was teaching the children, while Celine mused that it would be good for her to learn, whether Haniel could or not. The Swan chided Celine for being a bird brain, startling her, then thought to herself that the little signet was still young and would eventually understand. Catherine believed Haniel was different and would have plenty of family to teach her, while Celine pondered if blood was thicker than water. At a lavish party, a noble lady inquired about the emperor's usual schedule and was told that a welcome party is hosted by the highest-ranking family in the area. When asked about the timing, the lady explained that all the nobles of the north must be invited, which prompted a panicked voice to forbid the thought of going there. Back at the lake, Celine warned the Swan that Princess Rana had forbidden her from attending, but Catherine dismissed it as nonsense. The Swan took to the sky with determined grace, flying directly toward the brilliantly lit manor in the distance. Inside the ornate hall, a voice demanded that more decorations be added immediately. On a high balcony, Rana, in a striking red dress, ordered her maids to cover the chandeliers with blinding diamonds. A calm voice from behind her asked who exactly she was trying to blind, causing Rana to turn in surprise. The speaker was revealed to be a mysterious, dark-haired man in a blue hooded cloak, identified as Ronan. Rana chided Ronan for appearing without her permission. He feigned being hurt, but she warned him that as the heir to the Archmage Kyrian, using magic so recklessly would draw attention to his presence. Ronan simply offered a confident, sly smile. Ronan mentioned his surprise that the Emperor had accepted the party invitation, but Rana casually dismissed his surprise with a confident smile. Rana explained that it was tradition for the Lord of the North to host such a party. Ronan countered that His Majesty had been busy with such events and asked what she meant, while she smiled meaningfully on the balcony. Ronan waited as the white-haired Rana, holding a fan, considered her response. Rana chided him for his impertinence, but Ronan smiled coldly, reminding the princess that all of Ivandel's fate rested in his hands. As Catherine decided to pay her respects, Rana argued with Ronan, refusing to let the woman with no background attend as the duchy's representative, but he calmly insisted it was custom. Ronan suggested the emperor might seek out Catherine first, but Rana scoffed that a monarch focused on war would surely not care about such trivial matters. Ronan then hypothesized that the princess's situation might be different, but Rana coldly retorted, asking if he really thought she hadn't considered that. Rana declared they would simply say Catherine was ill. She was determined not to let anything be seen that did not befit the dignity of the ducal family. Watching from a window, two snails looked on as Ronan asked if she was just going to leave Catherine be. Rana replied, absolutely not, lest people think they had invited her. Rana looked out the window and smirked, certain that Catherine, trapped at the lake, was oblivious to what was happening. A snail on Catherine's hand seemed to ask why someone was speaking ill of the madam. In the garden, Catherine reassured her animal companions that they had worked hard and dismissed the snail's worries, feeding some small birds. Holding the snail, Catherine cryptically explained that it wouldn't understand the sequence of transformations from knight to duck to snail. The duck, Celine, waddled forward with a small white signet, formally addressing Catherine as madam. Celine explained that she had brought the signet as requested, but was worried the little one couldn't get in because it was hiding. Catherine gently told her it was all right. Catherine knelt down and gently took the trembling little signet in her hands. She stood up with purpose, announcing that she must go and prepare which prompted the surrounding birds to ask in surprise if she was really going. The snail on her hand warned her that Princess Rania had blocked the path to the mansion with a thicket of thorns to keep out banquet guests. Unfazed, Catherine simply smiled and instructed two small birds to go find beavers for her. The scene shifts to a panoramic view of a grand, blue-roofed city under a clear sky. At the party, Rebecca, now in a beautiful purple gown, gracefully welcomed the arriving count and countess. The count expressed his joy at seeing the ducal house's gates open once more, saying that all the nobles had been waiting for this day. Rebecca demurred piously, claiming she could not selfishly enjoy a banquet while the emperor and her father fought for Rohan. Nearby, ladies whispered praise for Rebecca's beauty and wisdom, calling her the best potential daughter-in-law. The ladies gossiped as another noblewoman tried to introduce her son, with one asking if Rebecca was referring to the emperor's close aide. Her friend gushed that the aide's future was absolutely guaranteed. Rebecca turned the question back on the ladies, slyly asking if a woman had already been chosen to share that fortune. The targeted noblewoman stammered flusteredly that she supposed so. Rebecca smiled sweetly and excused herself to greet other guests, leaving the noblewoman looking bewildered. An elegant boot stepped onto the gleaming floor, heralding the arrival of an important guest. The emperor entered the party grandly, flanked by his two sons. Rania led the northern nobles in formally greeting the emperor and the princes, introducing herself as the eldest daughter of Ivandel. As he told her to rise, Rania expressed her honor and reminded the emperor that it had been 3 years, but he asked what she meant by that. She clarified that it had been that long since the late empress's last visit. The emperor acknowledged that the princess must have gone to great trouble to host this welcome party. A guest noted that no banquets had been held since the duke's death, but Rania insisted it was only natural to honor the emperor's visit. Rania invoked her father's teachings to show her loyalty, but the emperor sharply asked why she wasn't heeding his words. He stated that by proper etiquette, someone else should have bowed to him first, leaving a confused Rania to ask what he meant. A flustered Rania suggested he might be referring to her sister, Rebecca, who was waiting nearby. The emperor coldly asked if her etiquette placed a sister before a mother, shocking Rania, who questioned his meaning. He bluntly pointed out that the Dowager Duchess of Ivandel was absent from the reception. The emperor's eyes flashed a threatening red, reinforcing the question as he demanded to know where the Dowager Duchess was. His gaze hardened as he repeated his question, his anger palpable. A panicked Rania insisted that was not the issue at the moment. Internally, Rania furiously wondered how the emperor could possibly know that woman and questioned why he was looking for her mother. She explained that after her father's death, her mother had stopped eating and had been in seclusion ever since. The emperor smirked, his red eyes flashing, as he repeated Rania's words about the duchess refusing to eat. Rania struggled internally with how to answer, admitting to herself that her mother was in no state to be seen, but hesitating to speak of such family shame. Rania clenched her fists, angry that this conversation was ruining her plan to have the first dance with the emperor. Rania formally apologized for troubling him with family matters, but a nobleman defended her, claiming she had done nothing wrong. The nobleman went on to claim that everyone knew the Dowager Duchess was unwell, and other guests murmured in agreement. The emperor's eyes glowed red as he coldly reminded the man that he had not been given permission to speak. He threateningly asked if the nobleman was prepared to take responsibility for his words, silencing the entire room. Rania hastily intervened, pleading with the emperor that there was no need to take sides or take responsibility. She quickly added that she was simply worried about burdening her sick mother. As a pair of elegant purple heels stepped forward, a new voice said that if she had known her daughter was in such a predicament, she would have come sooner. Catherine made a stunning entrance in a black dress, causing the entire hall to gasp. Rania stammered in disbelief, questioning why her mother, Catherine, was there. Catherine calmly replied that she couldn't bear to let her worry, her presence captivating the onlookers with a gentle smile. Catherine chided the glaring Rania to relax her expression, asking if she was intruding. Catherine explained that she was just trying to be considerate of Rania's burden, as a daughter shouldn't have to bear such a responsibility alone. Rania questioned whether it was appropriate for her to be there, but internally demanded that she leave at once. Catherine reassured the stunned Rania that, of course, it was fine, as she was always worried about her eldest daughter. Rania fumed internally, thinking that Catherine was overstepping her position as the lady of the house. The noblewomen who had been gossiping earlier stammered, realizing that Catherine was indeed the eldest daughter's mother. A nobleman quickly tried to cover, claiming they were all just worried about the duchess. Catherine gracefully told them that if they were so worried, they were welcome to visit her anytime. Rania glared furiously, thinking that her mother's expression looked like she wanted to skin her alive. Catherine curtsied gracefully before the emperor, introducing herself as the former duchess of Ivandel, and he told her to rise. As Catherine expressed her honor, the emperor thought to himself that her voice sounded strangely familiar. The emperor stared intently at Catherine, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. The scene focuses on ornate white roses, adding to the tense atmosphere. Catherine looked up, a hint of surprise on her face. The emperor and Catherine stood face to face, the air thick with unspoken history and tension. Catherine found the emperor's intense gaze uncomfortable and demurely asked if this was his first time seeing her. Internally, however, she mused that it was impossible, as forgetting such a handsome man would be a sin. Her expression turned serious as she internally wondered how to bring up Haniel's name. As all eyes in the hall focused on the emperor, a bead of nervous sweat formed on Catherine's brow. The emperor's red eyes flashed with irritation as he gripped the hilt of his sword. His sons reacted with confusion, one of the princes asking aloud about the dancing. The emperor addressed the room, telling everyone to act as they normally would, whether it be dancing or wielding swords. He glared internally, ordering those who were staring at him to stop at once. Catherine observed his foul mood, thinking what a tyrant he was, and that it was no wonder his sister had run away. Rebecca stepped forward, took Catherine's hand, and suggested to the emperor that he might find it stuffy inside. She sweetly invited the emperor to join her outside, away from prying eyes, to see the new white horses. When the emperor asked with whom, a flustered Rebecca asserted that she, as the eldest daughter of Ivandel, would guide him. The emperor retorted that her stepmother was the legal head of the house, which made Catherine internally cheer for the tyrant. Rebecca clenched her dress, stammering that while that was true, there was a reason. Rebecca told the emperor that her mother was in no condition to entertain guests and turned to Catherine for confirmation. Rebecca added with a condescending look that Catherine wouldn't know the place she was taking him to anyway. Catherine's purple eyes gleamed with a subtle and confident smile, ready with a response. As Rebecca tried to make her case to the emperor, Catherine cut in, stating that the only place she knew was like Perdium. She finished calmly, leaving Rebecca looking confused. Rebecca whipped around, her expression one of pure shock at this unexpected turn of events. Mention of the lake. Catherine calmly listed the lake's mythical inhabitants: the big-mouthed bird, the giant turtle, and a legendary 7-colored lynx. She asked with a sly smile if it sounded familiar, adding that Rebecca's own sister was one of them. The emperor stepped forward, his interest piqued, and declared that it didn't sound bad at all. He moved closer to Catherine, their proximity filling the air with palpable tension. His sharp red eyes fixed on her, watching her intently. He leaned in close and asked what exactly she was looking at, startling Catherine. Before she could answer, his gloved hand gently lifted her chin, forcing her to look up. He paused, holding a small thorn he had just plucked from her skin. He showed her the removed thorn, a gesture that surprised Catherine and visibly annoyed Rebecca. The emperor smirked, commenting that it seemed the duchess did have a lot to show him. Catherine, utterly confused, internally wondered if he was being sarcastic. Catherine confidently assured the emperor that he would not regret the visit, but he coldly challenged her, asking what would happen if he did. Caught off guard, she admitted to herself that she hadn't actually considered that possibility. The emperor turned to leave, against a background vision of red roses blooming amidst a thicket of thorns. Rebecca grabbed Catherine's arm from behind, angrily demanding to know what she was plotting. As Rebecca demanded an answer, Catherine coolly complained that she was wrinkling her dress. Rebecca said Catherine's name, but Catherine coldly suggested she lower her voice. Rebecca warned that this wouldn't end well for her, but Catherine just returned the threat to her dear daughter. Catherine said she wouldn't discuss the curse, prompting Rebecca to call her a fool for believing such things and ask who would believe her. Rebecca scoffed, dismissing Catherine as a raving witch with not a shred of proof. As Rebecca taunted her, Catherine retorted that she needed no other proof, as her own body was the evidence. Catherine reflected on her infamy as the Witch of the North, knowing no one would believe her on her word alone. She thought with quiet intensity, "Don't you get it?" She faced Rebecca with grim determination, realizing she had nothing left to lose. Rebecca scoffed that Catherine's death would change nothing, but Catherine challenged this assertion with a triumphant smirk. Catherine delivered the devastating blow. If she died, Rebecca could never become empress. Rebecca was struck speechless, her mouth agape in surprise. Catherine reflected on how odd it was for Rania, who had everything, to deliberately delay her engagement, realizing she was waiting for a specific groom. She chided herself internally, wondering why she hadn't realized the truth sooner. Catherine admitted that her dislike for Rania had blinded her, but now she recalled Rania's blushing, adoring look as she gazed at the palace. In a flashback, a black-clad Catherine recalled questioning a white goose by the lake, having first confirmed with Lady Mello. She remembered asking why His Majesty the Emperor had not yet married, speculating if there were unusual procedures or regulations. The goose explained that the 3-year mourning period for the late Emperor and Empress was about to end, then cheekily asked why Catherine was smiling. Back in the present, Rania grabbed Catherine, furiously demanding to know who had told her their secret, but Catherine coolly replied that she didn't need to hear it from anyone. Catherine leaned in close, cruelly taunting Rania by pointing out that if she was a witch, then Rania was nothing but a witch's daughter. Catherine continued her verbal assault, musing on the difference between a rumored witch and one who truly becomes one, and questioning if Rania could become empress if her mother died an unnatural death. She calmly told a stunned Rania that she was content with her life now and that Rania should focus on her own ambitions. With a final, condescending smile, Catherine suggested that her esteemed eldest daughter should just focus on her bridal training. Having won the confrontation, Catherine walked out of the palace with her basket, the wind ruffling her hair. Looking back at Rania, Catherine thought to herself that she couldn't stay low-key like this forever. After this, as she walked toward the peaceful lakeshore, Catherine decided that her involvement would end when she returned Haniel. Surrounded by blooming flowers, Catherine reflected sadly that it was finally time to say goodbye. In the lush garden, a duck named Celine asked if the madam was coming out, and Catherine called the duck's name in response. Catherine asked Celine how the little chick in the basket was, and Celine reported that the little one had been completely silent. Catherine dismissed the duck, but a worried Celine asked if she would be okay alone. Catherine ignored the question and gently lifted the sleeping white chick from the basket. She sat in the sun-dappled grass, holding the small creature close against her dress. A bright red ribbon unfurled against a backdrop of flowers. Catherine carefully tied the red ribbon around the chick's neck, affectionately calling her our princess. She smiled warmly, nuzzling the decorated chick. Her joy was bittersweet as she reflected that even if Haniel called her mom and fulfilled her dream, she could no longer be this child's mother. The little chick, now with red glowing eyes, happily waddled after Catherine among the purple flowers. The little chick explained that her teacher had said it might hurt Mommy, so she shouldn't do it. Catherine's eyes welled up with tears, deeply moved by the little chick's innocent concern for her. Overcome with emotion, Catherine reassured the little one that it didn't hurt at all, that she wouldn't be abandoned, and that Mommy would do better. With new purpose, she resolved to be a good mother for just one day, regardless of what happened to her own life. The little chick sadly stated that she wouldn't call her Mommy, leading a panicked Catherine to desperately insist that she was her mom. Catherine sobbed, promising to raise her as the happiest little Swan in the world, even if she couldn't raise her as a princess. Catherine embraced the chick with tears of joy, exclaiming, "My baby." They shared a moment of peaceful connection on the sun-dappled grass. Observing from a distance, the emperor's son, Tinin, was warned by his older brother not to get too close to the unstable duchess. The speaking brother smiled slyly, thinking that Catherine must have her reasons, as the emperor and his sons continued to watch her. A prince wondered aloud how Catherine's story would unfold and turned to the emperor for his thoughts, when another son suggested His Majesty should approach the duchess, which the emperor sternly refused. The emperor glanced back coldly, questioning why he should get involved. His son suggested calling Princess Rania to handle the situation, but the emperor vetoed that idea as well. He continued to watch Catherine from a distance, admitting that her earlier words about showing him a performance were at least true. At this moment, Catherine, transformed into a giant black swan, brought the chick to a moonlit lake, where she quieted a panicked Celine by reminding it that the baby was asleep. The swan explained that she had waited a long time at the appointed place, but Celine never came, to which the duck replied in confusion, "Really?" Celine nervously told the swan to be quiet, feeling like it was being drawn into a conspiracy. The swan argued that the mother needed a nanny, prompting Celine to ask why it was being stared at so murderously. The swan majestically spread its wings, preparing to tell Celine something surprising, which made the duck tremble all over. The swan struck a dramatic pose, while Celine pleaded for a moment. As the swan reflected on her actions that day, a sweating Celine walked away, thinking her status was unsuitable for raising the child, and wishing the swan would shut up. The swan revealed the shocking truth. The chick's older brother was the emperor, which made Celine freeze in terror. Celine screamed and flew away in a panic, with the swan calling her name from behind. Celine chaotically crashed into a flock of ducks, drawing the swan's furious gaze, who demanded to know what she was doing. Terrified, Celine trembled, bowed with her head in the grass, and pretended she had heard absolutely nothing. The black swan angrily grabbed the trembling duck's beak, demanding to know what it was saying, and insisted that Haniel was the only princess of Rohan. The duck argued that the parent-child relationship is destined by heaven, questioning how a black swan and a white chick could be mother and daughter, but the swan received a divine endorsement from an angelic figure. A sense of realization washed over the black swan as she collapsed, realizing this must have been how Haniel felt. The duck questioned why the swan had suddenly changed her mind, reminding her that she had previously made a solemn decision to return the chick. The swan explained that she had met the chick's older brother, the emperor, but the duck countered that he was clearly a failed guardian, declaring that she couldn't give up now. The swan raised 2 wingtips to begin negotiations, offering a condition of 30 fishcakes a month. She dramatically raised the price to 40 fishcakes, stunning the duck with a blatant bribe. The duck patted the swan's wing in agreement, and they reached a deal with shared determination. As the swan cheerfully announced to the chick in the basket that she had a nanny, the little one woke up and sweetly called out, "Mommy." Meanwhile, in a grand office, a kneeling aide reported to the emperor that the duchess had been acting as regent ever since the late duke's injury. The aide continued his report, explaining that the isolated northern region was heavily dependent on the ducal family. The emperor contemplated the stepmother's ambition, considering she had married a duke old enough to be her father. The aide explained the duchess's weak position, citing her lack of lineage and a father who was a notorious, alcoholic, and polygamous baron. The emperor listened intently, his expression grave as he absorbed the details of the duchess's precarious situation. The emperor turned from the window and demanded to know what other rumors might disqualify her as duchess, startling the nervous aide. The aide recounted rumors of her having witch's blood, being mentally unstable, and possibly being involved in the duke's murder, but the emperor scoffed at the witch claim, dismissing it as old news. Under the expectant gazes of the emperor and his sons, the bewildered aide became flustered. The emperor quietly touched the brooch at his neck, lost in thought. He laughed, dismissing the rumors as pure nonsense, which led the confused aide to ask if none of them were true. The aide nervously admitted he wasn't even sure if the duke and duchess had ever formally met, to which the emperor sneered. "Is that so?" He recalled seeing the duchess crying by the lake, wondering why she would be in such a state if the rumors were baseless. The aide explained that Princess Rania's efforts had suppressed all questions about the duchess, ensuring no one dared to challenge the Ivandel family. The emperor realized that as long as the princess's reputation grew, suspicion towards the duchess would continue to fester. With a determined gaze, the emperor listened as the aide confirmed that even the vassals in the duchy were unquestionably loyal to the duchess. The emperor spun around abruptly and demanded the aide declare who his master was, causing the man to stammer out an oath of loyalty to the emperor. The emperor stood before the terrified aide, glad he didn't need to use violence to remind him who provided for his family. Having made his point, the emperor coldly dismissed the trembling man. Now sitting at his desk, the emperor sensed his son's hesitation and asked what was troubling them, whereupon one of them asked about the rumor of the duchess harming a child. The emperor's hand, holding a document, paused as his sons watched him anxiously, seeing him silently ponder the question. He firmly put down his quill and decisively stated that she was not the kind of witch who would harm a child. As a sealed black letter was presented, the emperor decided the truth would come out when they finally met her. One of his sons proposed visiting the duchess alone so the emperor could focus on Haniel's case, but the emperor flatly refused. With a troubled expression, the emperor speculated that the two matters might be connected, especially if the duchess truly was a child-harming witch. As an aide recalled the emperor's earlier contradictory statement, a sinister, blue-haired figure on the throne illustrated the lingering suspicion. One of the sons, Peyton, pointed out that due to its strategic location, the northern nobility was full of warriors, a point his brother affirmed. The emperor challenged their assumption, pointedly asking how many of those so-called valiant knights they had actually seen at the last banquet. His sons were stunned, unable to recall any famous warriors, and began to question the official story about the duke's death. After instructing an aide to deliver a letter, the emperor sighed and turned to Peyton, asking what he had learned so far. The emperor expressed doubt that a simple letter would reach the right person, hinting at a more direct plan. He raised his brooch with a sly smile, explaining that it was a key to the most hidden part of the mansion. A brilliant flash of light marked a magical transition, and the scene shifted away from the palace. In a sunny room filled with yellow flowers, Catherine, restored to her human form, held the little chick, who asked, "Mommy, is that you?" She happily confirmed it. When the chick asked if she was the Black Swan, Catherine clarified that she was Mommy, prompting the duck, Celine, to teasingly comment that she was living too recklessly. Catherine sweetly told Celine that she was the only nanny she trusted, while Celine privately lamented being chosen for the role. Catherine gently asked Haniel why she could still recognize her even after she had changed back from a swan. An ecstatic Catherine bounced on the bench, marveling that her little princess could speak like the people of the lake. Holding Haniel, Catherine declared that she must make plans for the future, which piqued the chick's curiosity. Celine pressed a sweating Catherine, asking if she really had a plan, forcing Catherine to stammer that of course she did. Catherine then had a sudden, stark realization. She hadn't just hired a nanny, she had brought back a sister-in-law. She announced their first step was school, and when Celine assumed it was the strict etiquette academy, Catherine confirmed with a confident expression that it was a necessary and heartbreaking choice. Catherine, holding Haniel, seemed to have a plan, which made the duck Celine suspicious. The little chick, Haniel, looked up with teary eyes and asked her mommy where she was going. Haniel cried that her older brother was scary, but Catherine lovingly reassured her that she wouldn't be going to him. In a moment of silent resolve, Catherine vowed to protect Haniel until someone else appeared who could shield her from loneliness. Although Catherine promised to stay by Haniel's side, the duck Celine questioned if she really intended to keep calling the princess by that commoner's name. Celine sarcastically suggested some terrible nicknames, like two-legged chick or even white-cut chicken, since she would eventually become one. Catherine gently held Haniel and smiled, as if she had already decided on the perfect name. A narration panel revealed that in the original story, Haniel was the name the princess used after her real name was stolen. Celine peeked through a crack in the door, admitted the name wasn't bad, and suggested a fishcake party to celebrate, asking if that was the entire plan. A sudden shout from Celine startled Catherine and the chick. A knock came from the door, and a silhouette put everyone on alert. Standing outside the door, Catherine wondered who it could be, thinking that Rania and Rebecca would never knock so politely. Upon opening the door, Catherine was surprised to see a blond young man. The man touched the brooch on his collar, apologized, and asked for her understanding of the circumstances that compelled his visit. He formally introduced himself as Peyton, the third prince of the empire, leaving Catherine stammering in shock. Peyton explained that the emperor had instructed him to deliver a letter, which he presented to a nervous Catherine. He further informed her her that His Majesty would be visiting soon, a fact she silently processed as she gazed out at the manor grounds. After Peyton left, Catherine collapsed onto the floor by the window, completely overwhelmed by the news. Holding the black, sealed letter, Catherine realized with dread that she needed to completely revise their plans. A promotional image showed Catherine in a black dress with a red rose in her hair, advertising the series. In a dark and mysterious scene, an ethereal voice noted that those who use black magic don't always show outward signs. The Emperor's aide reported rumors about black magic users, describing them as having dark hair, being emotionally unstable, and possessing stunning beauty, which prompted the Emperor to ask what else he knew. Prince Peyton confidently declared it must be that woman, but his green-haired brother warned him to be careful. The Emperor asked if that was all the aide had, who then added that he'd heard black magic could control people's minds. Learning that breaking free from the control was nearly impossible, the Emperor grimly acknowledged the gravity of the situation and vowed to root out any user for the sake of Rowan. Prince Peyton returned to the Great Hall and formally announced his return to the Emperor. When asked about the meeting, Peyton reported that the Duchess, though a bit flustered, had shown great respect and was eager to see the Emperor. The Emperor listened with a skeptical expression, while another prince worried about what would happen if she were truly a witch. The Emperor dismissed the concern about witches, stating that with Haniel and other suspicious activities in the north, they had bigger problems to deal with. His sons agreed with his assessment, and the scene transitioned to a floral background. The Emperor mused that there were only two famous women in the north, a saint and a villainess, and it would be interesting to see which was which. When his son suggested monitoring Princess Rania as well to speed things up, the Emperor vetoed the idea, implying one was a proxy for the other. The Emperor smiled as he pictured Catherine in his mind, admitting he preferred this one. Standing before the grand manor, Catherine felt the place was not fit for a sinner like her. She took a deep breath to calm her nerves, telling herself to be composed. Guided by the butler, Catherine steeled her resolve, vowing to play her part perfectly to protect the child she loved. Sitting on the throne, the Emperor found a strange familiarity in Catherine's cold gaze. It dawned on Catherine that the Emperor's eyes were exactly like Haniel's when she used to ask to be held. The Emperor caught her expression and asked if she was smiling, which made her panic internally at the striking resemblance between the two. He commented that the Duchess seemed to be in a good mood, a comment she quickly and frantically denied. Catherine adopted a sorrowful posture, claiming she had been mourning alone since the Duke's passing and couldn't possibly be cheerful. The Emperor pressed further, asking if anything memorable had happened during her time there or if she knew any famous people. When he asked if there was really nothing, she cheerfully insisted there wasn't. Catherine thought to herself that if she mentioned her Haniel, he would surely kill her. The Emperor suddenly shouted, "Enough," making Catherine curse his reputation as a tyrant in her mind. Catherine respectfully took her leave, his mention of that day still lingering in her mind. Her eyes widened in horror as she understood the meaning behind his words. She nervously asked which day he was referring to, but he coldly asked if she really didn't remember. Catherine retorted angrily that she had waited for him until dark, shifting the blame for the missed meeting onto him. In a panic, she recalled the tender moments with Haniel, terrified that the Emperor had seen everything, but vowed never to give up her child. The Emperor asked if she was waiting for him, and Catherine obediently replied yes. He gave a knowing smile, which filled Catherine with anxiety and made her wonder internally why he was smiling again. Catherine desperately searched for an excuse in her mind, insisting that anything he saw was a misunderstanding and that there was a reason she couldn't meet him sooner. She feigned composure, expressing regret that he had missed the beautiful lake, while inwardly relieved that he hadn't seen anything. As Catherine tried to make a hasty, self-deprecating exit, the Emperor stopped her, asking if she was leaving already. She froze as a wave of déjà vu washed over her, wondering why the situation felt so familiar. The Emperor casually mentioned that the princes were waiting with refreshments, but Catherine claimed she had urgent business to attend to. He mockingly questioned her urgency, asking if she did nothing but stare at the lake all day, leaving her speechless. The Emperor slyly suggested she have some sweets, commenting that she looked as if she were about to be eaten. His words triggered a terrifying memory of being chased, causing Catherine's eyes to widen in shock. Now, she was sitting for tea with the Emperor and his sons, and Prince Peyton asked if she liked the tea, offering to get her a different kind. Catherine panicked internally, realizing with horror that she had seen the Emperor and his sons waiting in line at a dessert shop. The Emperor commented that he had found her extraordinary even then, to which she nervously feigned surprise. Catherine outwardly agreed with him, while inwardly mocking the idea of 3 royal men lining up for cake. Absolutely extraordinary. She apologized for her earlier rudeness, and the Emperor coldly stated that he believed her. He added a chilling threat, explaining that otherwise she wouldn't be sitting here with her head still on her shoulders, drinking tea. When the green-haired prince insisted on repaying her, Catherine nervously refused, but the Emperor interjected that he certainly minded. Facing the intimidating Emperor, Catherine inwardly praised Haniel for having the foresight to run away from home. Peyton tried to ease the tension, reminding the Emperor that the Duchess claimed she didn't know their identities. Catherine watched, blushing, thinking that Peyton must be the kind 3rd prince and the only normal one among them. Catherine composed herself, sitting with a hand on her chest and a pensive look on her face. She began to worry aloud about her chest, but the Emperor, looking completely bewildered, asked for a pardon. Catherine quickly improvised, apologizing for having hurt his noble chest and blaming her foolishness on her reclusive lifestyle. The Emperor, resting his chin on his hand, pointedly asked if she was missing the late Duke. He dismissed her behavior as an accident, confusing his sons, while Catherine stammered that she was honored. Prince Peyton kindly offered Catherine a handkerchief. Deeply moved, Catherine thought as she took it that Haniel was so lucky to have a brother like him. Suddenly, a formidable long sword was thrust between Catherine and Peyton, startling them both. Catherine was shocked to see Emperor Tenon holding the sword, his eyes glaring with rage. As Peyton warned him to be careful, the green-haired prince shouted, "Tenon," while Catherine scoffed internally, refusing to accept a handkerchief from a man. Catherine tried to end the meeting, stating that since the misunderstanding was cleared up, she would go reflect on her actions. Tenon leaned back with a skeptical look, questioning if things were really cleared up. Catherine's inner voice revealed her desperate plan to retreat with a repentant heart and lie low for a while. She sat frozen at the table, her escape plan foiled. Tenon repeated his question with a bone-chilling gaze, making it clear he didn't believe her. Catherine was clearly flustered by the Emperor's relentless stare. He leaned closer, reminding her that she had promised not to regret something and demanded to know what it was, causing her to stammer. The 3 royal men all fixed their intense, synchronized gazes on her, awaiting an answer. Catherine panicked, lamenting that she wasn't some witty heroine, but a desperate widow with a child. Utter confusion was reflected in her violet pupils. She looked back at the 3 men, who were watching her with firm and expectant expressions. Feeling the immense pressure, Catherine felt their intense gazes were as if awaiting a great prophecy. The 3 princes watched with surprise and curiosity at Catherine's suddenly strange behavior. In desperation, Catherine awkwardly complimented Tenon's hair, causing Peyton to stifle a laugh while Tenon remained expressionless. Catherine screamed internally, wondering what was wrong with everyone, as the bizarre situation was driving her mad. Tenon leaned forward and suggested that by gazing into nature, she might be able to see things others could not. In a fit of panic, Catherine blurted out a warning that someone might be plotting to assassinate His Majesty. The Emperor and his sons' eyes glowed red, staring at her with threatening intensity. Realizing her slip of the tongue, Catherine cringed internally, admitting that was exactly what she had intended to say. The Emperor leaned closer, staring at her, and demanded to know how she had learned that information. Catherine inwardly scoffed at the Emperor's question, thinking that as a battlefield tyrant, he must have accumulated countless grudges. Seeing the surprised expressions on the royal man, Catherine congratulated herself internally, thinking, "I knew it." To survive, Catherine decided she had to be more serious than them, mysteriously mentioning the flow of the northern lake and a prophesied marriage. The Emperor cut her off with a stern and simple "enough." The scene transitioned with a floral overlay, showing Catherine and the Emperor in a tense silence at the tea table. Tenon rested his chin on his hand, observing Catherine with a firm and intense gaze. A close-up of the Emperor's red eyes showed a tiny, perfect reflection of Catherine within them. The Emperor continued to stare intently, while Catherine lowered her head as a single tear escaped her eye. The Emperor dismissed her, stating that the Duke's steward would see her out, to which she replied that she was deeply honored. As she prepared to leave, Catherine's legs were trembling, and she reminded herself to leave when dismissed. A stray thought wondered who could possibly know what the Emperor was thinking. Catherine's rational mind told her the most important thing was that she had been allowed to live. Catherine formally announced her departure. As she turned to leave, she wished him a pleasant time, even as a wave of dizziness hit her. Her vision distorted, and she heard a voice cry out, "Duchess." As she began to fall, she closed her eyes, bracing for impact as she stumbled forward. Suddenly, she was caught firmly in a man's arms. Catherine was stunned when she realized the Emperor had caught her, their faces inches apart. Tenon smirked and commented that it seemed she didn't actually want to leave. Catherine frantically pushed the Emperor away, insisting wildly that she wasn't trying to stay. Catherine fled down the grand corridor, thinking that while his intentions were a mystery, one thing was certain. She ran in terror, convinced that if she were caught by the Emperor, she would surely die. In the aftermath, a prince expressed concern for His Majesty's well-being. The green-haired prince angrily slapped away Peyton's hand as it reached for the Emperor, telling him to back off. Peyton argued that Catherine seemed to have no ill intent, but the Emperor flatly disagreed. The Emperor clutched his chest, looking flushed and completely overwhelmed, surrounded by the scent of white roses. Back in her quarters, Catherine called out in relief for her precious Haniel. Catherine joyfully reunited with Haniel, while another duck observed that their reunion was like two souls meeting again after a past life. The duck turned in alarm, asking if the Emperor had really said he would take the princess. The little duckling Haniel, held in loving hands, cried as large tears welled up in her big, red eyes. Catherine gently comforted the crying Haniel, saying she didn't have to go to her big brother. Cradling Haniel, Catherine marveled at the power of family and how a mother could not afford to get sick. When the duck mentioned that Haniel must be heavy, Catherine refused to put her down, wanting to cherish the moment a little longer. The duck asked if the princes were also scary, and Catherine confirmed they were strange in their own way, recalling how all three brothers had stared at her with unsettling intensity during the meeting. The duck suggested they stared because she was so beautiful, but a flustered Catherine insisted it wasn't like that. Catherine explained that it felt like a witch hunt, making the duck gasp at the gravity of the situation. She remembered the fourth prince looking like he wanted to rip her hair out at any moment. The duck dryly corrected her, guessing he was more likely planning to chop off her head and just pull her hair. Catherine shivered, thinking that the Emperor with the reddest eyes was the scariest of them all. Noticing her blush, the duck asked what she was thinking, but Catherine stammered a denial. She explained she was just in shock, feeling like she was on a daily emotional roller coaster of life and death. The duck questioned why she would go through such trouble to raise the princess, and Catherine admitted her previous life had indeed been more peaceful. Despite her words, she wore a loving smile as she held Haniel. The scene lingered on Catherine, gently holding the sleeping chick in her arms. With grim determination, Catherine clenched her fist as the worried duck watched. Catherine suddenly stood up and announced to the duck that they were leaving immediately to pack their things. The confused duck asked what the Emperor was like, and Catherine described him as tall, scary, and firm. When the duck asked in what way, Catherine quickly covered, claiming she was referring to the Empire's economy. Catherine had a nightmare where the Emperor loomed outside a cell, asking what she had done wrong, and she realized it was the torment of guilt. A mysterious voice questioned why Celine, who had been so eager to leave before, was suddenly hesitating. The duck, Nanny, watched Catherine with a pensive gaze, thinking, "Look at her." The duck questioned Catherine's plan to leave, reminding her that the princess's school entrance ceremony was coming up soon. Startled, Catherine dismissed the idea of a school entrance exam during a war and clarified her plan was for all of them to live together. Catherine scolded the duck for its sudden obsession with school, but the duck insisted she just knew the princess was destined to go. The adorable little chick, Haniel, peeked out of her basket and blinked sweetly. As Catherine lovingly greeted the awakened Haniel, her inner voice angrily blamed the duck for waking her. Haniel asked if she was going to school, but Catherine quickly reassured her that she didn't have to, reminding her of the scary teacher Mello. The duck frantically corrected her that the teacher's name was Machen and urged the not-quite-awake princess to come to her. The duck gently wiped Haniel's face with a cloth, saying they needed to wash up. Catherine grew suspicious and demanded to know what the duck really was, while the nervous duck feigned confusion. Now certain the duck was suspicious, Catherine ordered it to put Haniel down and come with her, but Haniel shrieked that she liked the nanny. Haniel pleaded with her mommy not to yell at the nanny, saying it was scary. As Haniel insisted the nanny stay, Catherine assumed it was the duck's manipulation, which the duck frantically denied. Haniel explained that unlike the scary nannies at the palace, the nanny from the lake was gentle and didn't yell. Haniel affectionately hugged the duck nanny, happily declaring that it was nice. Seeing Haniel's attachment, Catherine began to cry, and the duck gently told her it was okay to cry. The duck dramatically collapsed to the floor in apology, admitting it only wanted to sneak the leftover fish cakes and put the princess to sleep. The duck continued its performance, declaring itself unworthy, but Catherine cut it off with a stern "enough." Catherine glared at the sweating duck, letting it know she saw through its dramatic act. Catherine's tone softened as she acknowledged Haniel's endurance and asked if the palace nannies had really been mean to her. Haniel defiantly puffed out her chest and gave a vivid demonstration of what the mean palace nanny used to do. Haniel reveals that the nannies in the palace would ignore her hunger and told her not to cry out because it was tiring to walk over. Catherine is horrified to hear this. Upon learning of the cruel treatment the child endured, Catherine's expression turns cold and grim. She realizes Haniel's attachment stems from neglect, as no one in the entire palace showed her any affection. Catherine asks Haniel why she didn't tell her powerful older brother about the abuse. Haniel tearfully explains that her brother, Rashid, was even scarier and would whoosh at her. Confused by the word whoosh, Catherine comforts the crying Haniel and asks what her brother actually did. Haniel happily clarifies that her brother just told it to go away. The duck nanny misunderstands and presses, asking if the emperor brought a large dog and ordered it to bite the princess. Catherine clarifies that the emperor merely let the dog approach her, which Haniel confirms, praising the duck. The duck cries, condemning the royal family for treating a baby so cruelly, and a pained Catherine agrees. Catherine laughs through her tears, her maternal pride bruised by the complete misunderstanding of the situation. Haniel complains that the maids stole her food, and Catherine comforts her, while the duck asks about Catherine's strange gift. A fierce and tearful Catherine declares that Haniel is her daughter because she was the one who found her. Haniel asks about school again, bringing Catherine's attention back to the plan at hand. Catherine assures Haniel that they will go to a school by the new lake later, where she can make new friends. Haniel agrees. Driven by righteous indignation, Catherine recalls the palace nanny telling Haniel she couldn't go to school, and her resolve hardens. The duck passionately urges Catherine to send her, and Catherine agrees with fiery determination. They will attend the entrance ceremony. Her true plan is revealed. She will hide her luggage, attend the ceremony, and then make a perfect escape with Haniel. Haniel asks about her head, and Catherine smiles, confirming she is making a promise. Catherine coaches Haniel on their story, reminding her to use the name Rana. In front of Teacher Mello, Catherine proudly watches the duck and Haniel waddle away, practicing their escape plan. Clutching her packed suitcase, Catherine silently bids a hopeful farewell, praying they all meet again alive. She stands resolutely in the garden with her suitcase, the grand manor behind her. Catherine hurries along a forest path, thinking she must move quickly. A voice suddenly interrupts her mockingly, asking if she's going somewhere fun. Catherine turns to find a white-haired woman named Rania in a lavish dress, blocking her path with a sneer. Rania confronts Catherine, saying she knew Catherine's arrogance meant she would try to escape again. Rania mockingly asks if Catherine is mad to think a second escape would be easy, but Catherine warns her to watch her words. Rania sneers, telling her mother that she is the one who should be careful and be grateful she was allowed to live. Catherine laughs, realizing the true purpose of this confrontation. Catherine asks Rania if she is ashamed of her actions, but Rania furiously screams for her to shut up. Rania threatens Catherine to watch her mouth and not expect to escape, but Catherine defiantly yells back, asking who's running away. A mysterious voice muses about a picnic, followed by a dark warning that Catherine's life will begin and end at this lake. Rania emits an ominous glow and demands Catherine open her basket immediately, promising a reward depending on its contents. Catherine scoffs at the idea of theft and reveals that her magicians are on their way to get her, shocking Rania by implying she is familiar with them. The narration reveals the magician is a figure in a black cloak, the very one who gifted Rania the excessive feather she wears. Catherine asks what more Rania wants, questioning if she intends to turn her completely into a black swan. Rania sneers, musing that since Catherine's mind is unwell, it's only fitting that her body is abnormal too. Rania demands Catherine open her bag to prove she hasn't stolen anything, offering her a chance to beg for forgiveness. With a triumphant smirk, Rania watches Catherine's hesitation. Inwardly, Catherine seethes, refusing to beg from a woman like Rania and vowing she would rather die. Rania presses the silent Catherine, mockingly calling her name as she awaits her decision. Rania issues an ultimatum, either show her the box or have her thieving wrist cut off, forcing a frustrated Catherine to agree to her demand. The two women face off in a tense, silent standoff. Suddenly, the Emperor appears, commenting that the Duchess seems to have mistaken her duties, as both Catherine and Rania stare at him in shock. The Emperor stands before them, his stern expression framed by an aura of white roses. Both Catherine and Rania are stunned by the Emperor's sudden appearance. Catherine wonders why he is here, and as she turns to face him, the Emperor coldly remarks that she is late. Catherine stares at the Emperor, completely at a loss, wondering what to do now. The Emperor observes that the two women seem to be in the middle of a serious argument. Rania scrambles to apologize, but the Emperor coldly cuts her off, asking what there is to misunderstand. Rania nervously explains that she was just worried the Emperor might misunderstand her for raising her voice at her mother. The Emperor sarcastically asks if she means when she, a lady-in-waiting, was loudly ordering the Duchess to hand something over. He continues his interrogation, asking if she was questioning Catherine as one would a fugitive trying to escape. A panicked Rania insists she can explain the situation. Rania concocts a lie, claiming her mother was unwell and she was simply helping her with the picnic luggage, then asks Catherine to confirm. The Emperor turns to Catherine, asking if she was really just out for a walk or if there was another reason. Catherine thinks that if she had to choose someone to die, it would of course be Wa. Catherine suddenly grabs a surprised Rania and loudly declares that her eldest daughter is absolutely not correct. The Emperor watches the scene, thinking that no matter how desperate, one shouldn't enter a tiger's den to escape a fox. Catherine explains she felt stuffy and came out with her daughter, and a smiling Rania agrees, making Catherine think that Rania wants to live too. Catherine grips Rania's arm tightly, reminding her that she was the one excited about the picnic. Catherine agrees to give Rania what she wants, but inwardly vows she isn't mad enough to side with that wicked fox. As Catherine opens the basket, she tells Rania she prepared something she would like. Its contents shock Rania. Catherine feigns innocence, asking why Rania is surprised and suggesting she's just being shy because His Majesty is watching. The basket is filled with fish cakes, which Catherine proudly declares were made with the best ingredients for Haniel. Catherine smiles brightly, offering the basket full of fish cakes, thinking that this stuff could surely charm any non-human. Rania flinches, refusing the food, but Catherine presses her, asking why she won't eat what was prepared for her. Catherine feigns disappointment, asking if Rania, who was so eager just moments ago, is now unhappy with her stepmother's gift. Rania makes an excuse about not eating such things in front of the Emperor, but he declares it's fine. The Emperor sternly encourages Rania to eat if she wants, stating he doesn't care about such trivial matters. Rania stares in dismay, while Catherine smirks at the Emperor's subtle encouragement. With a trembling hand, Rania picks up a fish cake and reluctantly takes a bite. Catherine smiles radiantly and asks Rania how it tastes, and if it's perfectly to her daughter's liking. As Catherine and the Emperor watch Rania flee, the Emperor calls out to the Duchess, making Catherine feel like she's now alone with the beast. The Emperor takes the basket, musing that the lady-in-waiting must be very busy to have left her favorite thing behind, which is not like his daughter at all. The Emperor leans in close to a startled Catherine and whispers, asking if it was really necessary to be in such a hurry. The Emperor muses that to any observer, the Duchess looked as if she were genuinely trying to escape. The Emperor places a hand on a startled Catherine's shoulder. As she clutches the basket tightly through a thorn bush, the Emperor comments that the princess did something foolish, confusing Catherine. The Emperor's hand goes to his sword hilt, and he draws the blade. The Emperor swings his sword flamboyantly, cutting down the thorny vines blocking the path. The Emperor questions why one would go to the trouble of stopping someone bent on escaping, adding that there are simpler ways. Catherine smiles to herself, thinking she knew he'd come in handy eventually. The Emperor smirks, declaring that the Duchess, of course, has no reason to run away, and is sweating. Catherine stammers in agreement. The Emperor leans over Catherine and issues a chilling ultimatum. Don't you dare run away until our conversation is over, unless you have a life to spare. The Emperor questions Catherine's confused expression, stating he thought he had made himself perfectly clear. The Emperor turns and announces that he will be the one to decide where she is going. The Emperor smiles, saying that for both their sakes, he's glad she understood so quickly, while a terrified Catherine looks on. The Emperor threateningly questions if the Duchess would dare break her promise to him, and a small, sobbing Catherine insists she wouldn't. The Emperor sternly demands she explain why she was in the woods. A flustered Catherine claims she was just taking a walk, but the Emperor eyes her suspiciously, asking why she is dressed so splendidly. Catherine is baffled by his question, thinking pretty, as her mind fills with question marks. The Emperor clarifies his question, asking why she would wear such an elaborate and gorgeous dress for a simple walk. The Emperor blushes and looks away after his outburst. Catherine wonders why he is so angry, inwardly reasoning that she didn't steal the dress but made it from her own feathers. The Emperor sighs and again demands to know her destination, and a frustrated Catherine finally snaps, shouting that she is going to her sister's school entrance ceremony. Inwardly, Catherine admits her real fear isn't the terrifying man before her, but the thought of Haniel being all alone. In a flashback, Catherine assures Haniel she will be back before noon, and the little duckling looks up at her. Catherine's anger erupts, furious at him for pressing for a reason, worried that her timid little sister is already crying for her. Catherine desperately offers to explain later, willing to pay any price if he just lets her go, and the Emperor repeats, "Anything I want?" A close-up shows the Emperor's thoughtful and determined expression. The Emperor agrees to her request, deciding there's no reason for her to go to the ceremony alone. At the lakeside school, a voice calls for all new students to line up. Haniel cries out for her mommy, comforted by the duck nanny, while the goose, teacher Lady Mello, asks why Rana isn't answering. Teacher Lady Mello looks down at Haniel and asks if the little duckling recognizes her. Haniel nervously calls the goose Yellow teacher, making the teacher sparkle with pride. Headmaster Yellow corrects Haniel, reminding her this isn't her home and that throwing a tantrum won't guarantee her survival at the new school. As the other ducklings point at her, Haniel timidly whispers an apology. "I'm sorry, Wah." Headmaster Yellow sternly corrects Haniel's way of speaking. Just as the little duckling cries, a new voice announces that Lady Mello has arrived. Oh my, a gray swan named Mr. Darren appears, causing a flustered Lady Mello to hurry and greet him. Mr. Darren suggests that perhaps Lady Mello could soothe the new student herself. A flattered Lady Mello declines, instead praising Mr. Darren's abilities and introducing the promising Haniel to him. The gray swan, Darren, introduces himself to the hesitant Rana. Darren bends down and asks if Haniel has anything to say, and she stares at him, asking if her mommy has arrived. Darren notices she has a black swan, and Haniel explains that her mother promised she would come, demonstrating with a pinky promise. Haniel flaps her wings excitedly, describing her mother's huge and impressive wingspan. A mean voice tells Haniel to stop lying, claiming she doesn't have a mother at all, while other ducklings gossip that she only brought a nanny. Haniel trembles as the other ducklings shun her, leaving her alone with Darren. Suddenly, Haniel sees someone, her expression brightens, and she shouts, "Over here!" Catherine appears from among the flowers, cheerfully calling for her baby and announcing that mommy's here. Catherine apologizes to Haniel for being late, but proudly declares she kept her promise, not realizing the Emperor is watching. The Emperor covers his mouth, wondering what on earth he was expecting and lamenting that he has to witness this blasphemous reunion. He reflects on how desperately Catherine had pleaded to come here, finding it a mystery that she would so strongly desire to see this little bird. The Emperor recognizes the little bird from before. Catherine gently encourages Haniel to go on ahead. As Catherine runs past the Emperor, he warns her not to try and deceive him, but she yells back, asking why he's following her. Why? Catherine grabs the Emperor, frantically telling him he was supposed to hide and furiously asking how he dared to show himself. Catherine desperately clutches the Emperor's arm. Her grip tightens. Realizing her outburst, Catherine stumbles back, apologizing profusely to the Emperor. The Emperor scoffs, questioning if she really expected him to hide behind a tree for these pathetic animals, wondering what kind of woman she is. The Emperor resignedly decides to follow along and uncover the real reason behind her bizarre behavior. The Emperor turns and asks what's wrong, but Catherine quickly insists that it's nothing. As they stand together, the Emperor senses something about her is very conspicuous, yet he can't put his finger on it. Catherine strikes an unnaturally cheerful pose, but the Emperor isn't convinced, thinking something is definitely off. The Emperor scoffs. He asks if they came all this way just to watch these pathetic birds, shocking Catherine with his choice of words. Catherine nervously tries to point out a particularly cute bird, but the Emperor remains unmoved. Driven by survival instincts, Catherine's demeanor suddenly shifts and she beams. The dumbfounded Emperor finds her ridiculous behavior inexplicably amusing. He thoughtfully considers his own reaction, repeating the word amusing. The Emperor reflects that the most amusing part of this situation is himself. The Emperor actually hiding behind a tree with this strange woman. As Catherine continues her act, a vein pops on the Emperor's forehead, betraying his growing irritation. She carries on with her exaggerated performance while the Emperor watches, exhaustion written on his face. Surrounded by an illusion of beautiful flowers, Catherine asks him, "Isn't it beautiful?" The Emperor shuts her down with a simple, curt no, leaving Catherine looking dejected. Snap! As Catherine tries to slip away, the Emperor thinks, right? Is that how it is? As the Emperor watches her slowly edge away from him, an anger symbol appears over his head. The Emperor falls silent, crossing his arms and watching her with a tense, unreadable expression. As Catherine carefully tends to some flowers, the Emperor suddenly asks if the bird over there is hers, catching her off guard. He clarifies his question, seeing Haniel with the other ducklings, and Catherine nervously agrees that the little one is cute. They both stand and observe the flock of small birds gather by the water. The Emperor looks at a trembling Catherine, a silent question mark appearing in his mind as he tries to understand her strange reaction. Inwardly, Catherine forces herself to remain calm, reminding herself that rank is everything. Meanwhile, the Emperor continues to stare at her, finding her current reaction preferable, thinking it might offer a clue. His hand rests on his sword hilt, but he can't comprehend her strong reaction as all the birds look the same to him, which only adds to his confusion. The Emperor suddenly turns to leave, and a panicked Catherine calls out, asking where he is going. He glances at the ducklings and dismissively declares they are nothing but hatchlings. His shadow falls over a hatchling as he looks down at it, his gaze sharp and intense. The little cygnet in the water looks back at them, and the Emperor notices its direct stare. The cygnet begins to struggle and sink, and the Emperor is surprised to realize it's not a doll. A thought flashes through his mind. Despite being a cygnet, it's sinking because it can't swim. The Emperor coldly thinks that the Duchess can surely see what's happening. Catherine watches in pale horror. Quack! A terrified scream echoes as the other birds scatter in panic. Catherine rushes into the water, shouting for everyone to get out of the way as she frantically searches for her baby, while the nanny bird calls out in concern. Catherine wades deeper, calling for her baby, inwardly blaming that scoundrel of an emperor, wondering how his gaze could have caused this. She furiously vows that if anything happens to Haniel, she doesn't care if he's the emperor, they're all dead. Suddenly, the emperor grabs her from behind, telling her to move as she's blocking his view and he can't find the bird. He holds her tightly in the water, impatiently demanding she cooperate so he can find the damn bird. If you want to find your duckling, he begins, and a frustrated Catherine whispers, "Yes, anything. She fell in here." Catherine cries out, but the Emperor calmly replies, "I know." Catherine tearfully begs for her baby to come back, promising to do anything. The Emperor wonders what else she could possibly offer. The Emperor holds Catherine steady as she gently cups in her hands. Haniel's small, limp body. "Baby, open your eyes," Catherine pleads, and a faint maa comes from the little bird's beak. Catherine ecstatically cries out that her baby is alive and devoutly thanks God. The Emperor watches her emotional display as a divine revelation declares that the one in her arms is the first sign. The Emperor calls out softly, "Duchess." The second revelation descends. She is the only one who can hear the baby's voice, which whispers Ma again. Catherine looks up, a look of dawning realization on her face. The Emperor watches her with a serious, contemplative expression. Her hand trembles as she lightly touches the Emperor's chest, a fumbling gesture in a tense moment. As the Emperor holds Catherine, the birds call out in concern, asking about the baby. The Emperor turns his head to find a goose exclaiming, "Oh my goodness!" Surprised by his presence, the goose hastily pays its respects to His Majesty. The Emperor scoffs inwardly. What is with these birds? The Emperor scolds Catherine for jumping into the lake for a mere bird, but she feels a surge of inner rage, thinking he's talking about her sister. Catherine passionately defends her actions, declaring the bird is her only family and asking what else she could do when a child was drowning. Catherine tearfully tells the Emperor that he truly understands nothing. The Emperor places a hand on her shoulder, questioning if she wants to be cursed again, but she weakly protests while holding the sleeping Haniel. The Emperor looks down, wondering aloud what could be so great about a mere bird. A flustered Catherine insists it's no ordinary bird, prompting the Emperor to press her on what it is. She argues that it is a life worthy of an adult's respect and protection. He coldly counters her argument, asking what her own life is worth then. Catherine insists she is fine, but the Emperor cuts her off, making her inwardly furious at the question he posed. Approaching a grand manner, the Emperor instructs his subordinate to prepare a bath and food immediately. Catherine, holding Haniel, nervously asks if the Emperor intends to go inside. He glances back with an annoyed expression, thinking, this woman. The narration describes it as a lifeless building, unworthy of the Emperor, with nothing inside but dried fish cakes. Catherine nervously asks for the Emperor's pardon, explaining she was worried that inviting him into her humble home might cause a misunderstanding, especially since she lives alone. Snap! The Emperor tells her to stop making excuses and just admit she doesn't want him there, causing a panicked Catherine to hastily deny it. Catherine begins to talk about the day's events, but the Emperor cuts her off, telling her to forget it and simply keep her promise. As he looks away, Catherine is lost in thought, wondering if what she heard underwater was just a dream. A close-up shows Catherine looking flustered and surprised before the Emperor. Catherine turns away, dismissing the thought and deciding she must have misheard. As she stands before the mansion, attendants inside are rushing to carry out the Emperor's orders for a bath, food, and brandy, worriedly asking if His Majesty is all right. As the Emperor enters the hall, two men voice their shock and concern. The Emperor dismisses their concern, but an attendant insists it's only natural for them to make a fuss. He reflects that while he is used to this kind of attention, Catherine clearly is not. As his attendants speculate on what happened, the annoyed Emperor orders them to move aside. He recalls Catherine in the water and thinks, "You're insane." The Emperor stands alone, lost in a moment of thought among the flowers. A blonde attendant approaches and asks if the Emperor has a fever because he is blushing. Whack! The furious Emperor grabs the attendant's head and angrily tells him to shut up. His attendants are left confused and silent by his sudden outburst. The Emperor recalls Catherine's words about the bird being alive and grimly wonders just how far this which will go now. After changing into a clean shirt, the Emperor dismisses his attendants, telling them to wait outside and to hand over their things. He quietly examines a red ribbon in his hand. He hands the ribbon to a confused attendant and dismisses them to rest. The Emperor begins to take off his shirt, and an attendant asks him to wait. As he removes his shirt, his muscular back is revealed. Elsewhere, the nanny duck reports that Haniel's ribbon is missing, but Catherine, focused on Haniel, dismisses it as unimportant. Catherine holds Haniel tightly, thinking a ribbon is insignificant when her baby almost died. The nanny duck asks if Catherine was caught by Lady Rania while escaping, but Catherine vaguely replies that things just happen that way. Catherine sighs, feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of her new life and new body. With firm resolve, Haniel thinks that as a mother, she must do whatever it takes. Catherine gently asks a trembling Haniel what happened, but the little signet can only make distress sounds. Catherine is confused by Haniel's late-night ramblings, admitting that even her motherly love has its limits when it comes to translation. As Haniel mutters about a tree and her brother, the nanny duck steps in to translate. As Haniel's professional translator, the nanny explains that the princess panicked and sank after the emperor's sudden appearance. The nanny explains that it's common for young children to freeze up when frightened. Catherine looks a bit shaken, admitting it's not just children. She would have frozen in the exact same way. In a magnificent room, a voice says gently, "We're home, so you can call me mommy now." Catherine lovingly hugs Haniel, while the nanny duck explains that she has told her everything the princess said. Holding Haniel, Catherine thoughtfully tells the nanny duck that while she's not sure why, it's right not to judge a book by its cover. When the nanny duck excitedly flaps its wings on her lap, seeking attention just like Haniel, Catherine warmly agrees to include her too. In a grand room, a woman with grayish-purple hair, Rebecca, angrily questions her silver-haired sister, asking how much longer she will keep this up. The silver-haired woman, Princess Rania, glares back with a cold, sharp gaze. Startled by the sudden counter-question, Rebecca nervously asks what she means, while Rania demands to know where Ronan is. Rebecca stands before Rania's desk as the princess questions why she keeps inviting that man, asking if it's her duty or if Rania should be the one to do it. Rania coldly reminds Rebecca that this is a responsibility she took upon herself. Rebecca recalls being ordered to watch that woman and laments her failure, blaming her distraction on her sister's constant torment. Rebecca tries to downplay the situation, insisting Catherine didn't really escape and the basket only contained dried fish. Bang! A fist slams on the table as someone furiously shouts, "Shut up!" Rebecca flinches as an unseen person wonders what they're doing. Rania coldly tells a hesitant Rebecca to come in instead of just standing at the door. A man with long black hair, Ronan, appears in the doorway, thinking, as expected of the princess. Ronan smirks, noting that the princess seems displeased by his arrival, perhaps holding a grudge from a past encounter. "No," Rebecca shouts, defending Rania from Ronan's disrespectful comment, but Rania dismisses her, asking why she is still there. A flustered Rebecca quickly agrees to leave, turning to escape the tense confrontation. As Rebecca leaves, Ronan comments on the young princess's spirited nature, while Rania remains seated at her desk. Ronan then turned his attention to Princess Rania, similarly commenting on her vitality, but she bluntly asked him why he was there. Elsewhere, Ronan inspected a neatly cut section of wire fence, pondering who did it, while his inner thoughts questioned if it was His Majesty's doing. Rania pressed her temples, stressed over her issues with Catherine and now the Emperor. Ronan hinted that the two might be together, an idea Rania scoffed at, dismissing it as absolutely not. The scene shifted to the Emperor standing alone at a lavish ball, ignoring the women, while a distant Rania felt grateful for the time the distance could buy her. Back in the office, Ronan reported to Rania that Catherine had been sensible and hadn't crossed any lines during their last meeting. Ronan went on to question why Catherine would now dare to defy Rania and even consider running away. This prompted Rania to repeat his words. Rania, seething with anger, was convinced Catherine's picnic was just a ploy and that she had been about to yield before the Emperor intervened. With a scream, Rania collapsed dramatically while Ronan stood impassively by her furious side. Rania reminded Ronan that he had said the Emperor cut the fence and panicked at the thought of offending him by repairing it on the villa grounds. Ronan looked down at her, telling Rania to stop her act and say what she really thought. Ronan observed with a smirk that while Rania was usually rational, she lost her reason whenever the Emperor was involved. He wondered why Catherine would risk death by leaving now, knowing it meant certain death, while Rania listened with a troubled expression. Rania's expression hardened with determination. Ronan suggested that a woman with nothing to lose would only risk death when she found something worth dying for. The scene switched to Catherine's home, where someone was happily singing for their princess, Haniel. Catherine and the nanny duck, Celine, were frantically searching for someone, shouting that she was gone. Catherine comforted Haniel, reassuring the worried baby Swan that mommy was here. Haniel looked up with wide eyes, sad because her ribbon was missing. Catherine realized the ribbon was indeed lost, and as she held Haniel, the baby Swan spotted Big Brother in the distance. Catherine mused that the lost ribbon was insignificant and resignedly accepted Haniel calling the Emperor Big Brother. As Catherine and Haniel sat together, the nanny duck Celine rushed in, explaining she had come over because the princess had been missing for days. Catherine questioned Celine's recent suspicious behavior and asked where she had been going. Celine proudly spread her wings, asking Catherine to pay more attention to the princess. Catherine was secretly thrilled, thinking that her baby now had a homeroom teacher. Catherine played along, asking Haniel if she really had a homeroom teacher. Recalling Mrs. Harlow mentioning a strict new teacher, Catherine asked if the teacher was kind. Catherine corrected the nanny duck, reminding Haniel that Big Brother had saved her, which made the baby Swan look confused. Haniel trembled, trying to call out the name Rian. Celine noticed Catherine's slight cough and suggested she take some cold medicine. Catherine smiled, feeling content that even if she was sick, she finally had a family who cared for her. Catherine gave a thumbs up, telling an excited Celine that she had a secret plan, but to wait and see. Just as Catherine worried Celine wouldn't believe her, the nanny duck shouted excitedly that she always knew the madam had a plan. Catherine asked if Haniel's fever had broken, but the wing-flapping baby Swan was only concerned about her lost ribbon. Catherine gently asked if Haniel was sad, and the baby Swan sadly confirmed it was the ribbon her mom had given her. Holding a crying Haniel, Catherine promised to buy her a new one, even if it took until the next life. Celine offered to weave a replacement ribbon from her nest, surprising Catherine, who asked when she had built a nest. Celine explained she had been saving things because she couldn't take them with her when she died. Celine flapped her wings excitedly, presenting an ornately decorated woven basket with a giant pink ribbon, asking a shocked Catherine if this was also part of her plan. Elsewhere, a blonde attendant confirmed to the Emperor that he had delivered the item and left it at the door as instructed. The attendant explained he had just left it because it was a duck and not a swan. This prompted the Emperor to question the difference, and as the Emperor held his sword, his attendant casually remarked that the difference between a duck and a swan didn't matter. Two attendants were internally shocked that their brother, His Majesty the Emperor, would bother to distinguish between a swan and a duck. The Emperor sat alone by the window, brooding in his room for most of the day. His two attendants watched with concern, whispering that His Majesty seemed deeply troubled and might be unwell. The blushing Emperor touched his forehead, muttering about that which again, while an attendant noted his face was redder than usual. An attendant reported that the giant, glowing pearl showed no change and was even twinkling more intensely. The attendants agreed that the pearl's 3-year-old owner must be found quickly, with one still suspecting the Duchess was involved. When an attendant asked if he was saying she wasn't a witch, the Emperor confirmed, no, she is, leaving them utterly confused. As the attendants wondered if he meant she was a harmless witch, one offered to watch her, but the Emperor sternly asked why. The Emperor radiated an angry aura, demanding to know Tenen's intentions for monitoring Catherine, which made his attendants feel he was back to his usual self. Tenen nervously explained he just wanted to lighten His Majesty's burden, but the Emperor scolded him for being naive enough to think he could handle it. The Emperor stated that the attendants' involvement would only give him a headache, effectively rejecting the offer. After the attendants voiced their agreement, the Emperor asked if they had learned anything new about the woman. Tenen reported that she was quite obsessed with birds, a fact his colleague found baffling. The Emperor pondered just how much she liked birds, while an attendant pointed out that many black magic users use birds as familiars. The Emperor listened with a pensive expression, considering the implications of her connection to birds. An attendant compared the protective feeling to having a newborn sister, at which point a flashback showed the Emperor as a child looking at a crib. The Emperor dismissed the sentiment, calling her a suspicious and fearless woman. When an attendant asked about his plan, the Emperor revealed he had thrown out bait because she disliked seeing people, and the attendants realized he was referring to the gift sent via Prince Peyton. Prince Peyton clenched his fist, excited about the Emperor's plan. The Emperor looked out the window, whispering "Himph," of course with a confident smirk. Celine brought out a basket filled with fine delicacies from the ducal house, marveling that she had never seen such a beautiful basket. A startled Catherine immediately declared she was returning everything, shocking the nanny duck. Catherine, with a determined look, knew what this meant and began ordering the servants to prepare a bath with soap and towels. She understood the basket contained a response to everything the emperor had said to her that day. The basket contained not only food, but also fluffy towels, soap, and scented oils for a bath. Catherine felt humiliated, thinking the emperor must be pitying the poor state of the mad witch. She recalled her past actions of crying, making a scene, and then slinking back to her dark, empty villa. Sitting by the window, Catherine reflected that she had been living like this for a long time. Catherine told a confused Celine that these gifts were not allowed because they weren't from her. Wow! Haniel appeared excitedly, wearing her original red ribbon and showing Catherine a new box of ribbons, shouting that her ribbon had brought back friends. Catherine covered her mouth in shock, thinking with a blush that this wasn't supposed to happen. At the lake, Catherine and her birds greeted a large white goose named Lady Mellow, who had thought they weren't coming anymore. Catherine explained that Haniel needed time to recover, but Lady Mellow sarcastically retorted that she, the one who got kicked by the emperor, was still here. Catherine made a mental note that the old hag was clearly holding a grudge. When Lady Mellow asked why the emperor had come to the lake, Catherine nervously feigned ignorance, realizing Lady Mellow was looking for revenge. Catherine quickly asked if Haniel's absence would be counted as an excused sick leave. Lady Mellow made a disgruntled comment about the absurdity of Swan falling into the water and causing such commotion. Catherine happily told a wing-flapping Haniel that Miss Mellow had allowed her to return. Haniel proudly thought it was because she was pretty, and Catherine agreed, praising her good taste. Holding Haniel, Catherine made Celine admit how pretty she was, and the nanny duck called the sight a gift from the gods. Catherine looked away, internally questioning what the perpetually grumpy Lady Mellow was staring at. An elegant gray swan named Darren introduced himself to the duchess, as Haniel and Celine watched in awe. Darren praised Haniel's potential, assuring a smiling Catherine that such a bright child would learn anything in no time. Catherine was deeply moved, marveling that she had found a handsome and considerate teacher after dealing with the difficult Lady Mellow. Deciding to make a swift exit, Catherine left the flock of glaring geese before she could become the target of the next goose attack. As Catherine prepared to leave, Celine asked where she was going, while Catherine entrusted Darren with looking after Haniel occasionally. The duck Celine chided Catherine for not looking at her when she spoke. When Celine complained that she was acting like she was being dragged to a slaughterhouse, a grim-faced Catherine retorted, "Who says I'm not?" Catherine and Celine stood by the lake, gazing at the magnificent imperial palace in the distance. Prince Peyton informed Catherine that His Majesty was waiting for her, and she calmly agreed to see him. Walking towards the palace, Catherine grimly concluded that the emperor's gift was just a summons for her to pay overdue taxes. With a sense of dread, Catherine braced herself, wondering how harshly the emperor would interrogate her this time. The emperor, surrounded by yellow roses, casually asked what she was waiting for, confusing Catherine with his ordinary behavior. Catherine confronted the emperor, convinced he held a grudge because she made him fall into the water, and demanded that he make himself clear. Catherine groaned in frustration as the emperor just hummed with an unreadable expression. To bargain, Catherine offered to pay her debt with her body since she couldn't afford the ribbon. The emperor, amused by the flustered image of him she had conjured in her mind, smirked while Catherine insisted that wasn't what she meant. Holding a document, the emperor declared he would live up to her expectations and began giving an order, which made Catherine tremble. The emperor's order turned out to be a lavish meal, complete with a perfectly cooked steak. Sitting down to eat, Catherine eyed the food suspiciously, wondering if it was a plot to fatten her up before her execution. The emperor flatly promised not to kill her, but warned to relieve Catherine not to test his patience by asking the same question again. After taking a bite, Catherine was lost in bliss, wondering if her own princess ate this well. When the emperor asked if the food was not to her liking, she clarified that it was delicious and she was just curious about palace meals. The emperor asked with pity how long she had been starving, leaving Catherine embarrassed and speechless. Mortified, Catherine held her knife and thought, "Am I being pitted by a tyrant now?" She reflected that the emperor often didn't fit her expectations of a tyrant, and this moment was another prime example. Catherine struck back, retorting that he was the one to be pitted for losing his sister, which made the emperor confused by the look in her eyes. The emperor calmly pointed out that there was an exception, as his sister's nanny was supposed to be looking after her, but Catherine remained silent. Catherine angrily slammed her fork down, declaring that the nanny he mentioned had been abusing the powerless little princess. As Catherine deduced his sister must be young, the emperor loudly guessed if she was 2 or 4. Catherine took a sarcastic sip of her drink, noting that he had strangely skipped the number 3 in his guess. The emperor clarified that his sister was about 3 and assured Catherine she was eating well, as he had ordered she be given anything she wanted. When Catherine asked if he had gone to see his sister, the emperor admitted that the child cried every time he visited her. Catherine's inner chibi self cheekily acknowledged that it was the most honest thing he had said all day. Catherine suggested with a gentle smile that there must be a reason his sister cried, and asked if he had scared her. Framed by flowers, the emperor looked offended and proudly declared that was impossible. Catherine pressed on, asking if he had gone alone, and the emperor recalled bringing a dog. The emperor smirked at a memory, a flashback of a child's wails echoing in his mind. While enjoying the delicious meal, Catherine internally questioned the emperor's perception of a normal 3-year-old. Catherine apologized for the earlier incident, but the emperor stated it was no longer anyone's business. The emperor reminded Catherine of her promise and her knowledge of how light works. After she confirmed she remembered, the emperor told her to tell him how she could be of use to him. Catherine nervously listed her skills: palace management, gardening, and cooking animal feed, which the emperor deemed useless to him. To sweeten the deal, Catherine added that she was surprisingly good at dealing with people, animals, and plants. The emperor demanded more specific skills, so Catherine proudly detailed raising ostriches and making fertilizer, prompting him to cut her off. When Catherine teared up, thinking he disliked her skills, a panicked emperor grabbed the teapot and asked what he had said to upset her. Catherine calmly patted his hand, explaining that his flustered reaction was exactly the kind of thing she was referring to. She smiled confidently and told the emperor that she was used to dismissive looks and could no longer be hurt by them. The emperor declared that she was perfect as she was and instructed her to simply come to the palace every day to accompany him. Catherine was shocked by his offer, and the emperor leaned in, saying that her commoner-like and free status was ideal. The emperor coldly informed Catherine that she would be his official excuse for staying in the north. A shocked Catherine asked what he meant, but the emperor just said he had his reasons. The emperor revealed the real reason. The sister he had mentioned earlier was missing. After a delayed reaction, Catherine feigned surprise, prompting the emperor to dryly ask if she was slow to react. He explained that his sister's last trace was found here in the north. The emperor's determined red eyes were clearly visible in his gaze. Catherine panicked internally, hit by the sudden realization that she was the one secretly harboring his sister. The emperor put down his cup, stating that while she seemed safe, he had to confirm with his own eyes that she was alive and unharmed. Catherine cried out in horror, calling his words extremely ominous. She frantically insisted that such a terrible outcome was impossible and told him not to even imagine it. The emperor questioned her strong feelings for a princess she had never met, but Catherine stammered that the princess must be kept safe, thinking of the horrific fate awaiting a kidnapper and pleading that the baby was innocent. The emperor scoffed at her sentimentality, coldly asking if the person who kidnapped an imperial princess should be allowed to live. Catherine argued that soothing the princess should be the priority, but the emperor recoiled at the thought of holding a child. Catherine sighed and changed the subject, asking why he needed her help here. The emperor explained that as a ruler, he couldn't stay in the north without a valid reason, as it was already sparking rumors that he was plotting to attack the Levant kingdom. Catherine flinched, shocked to hear that Levant was the country of the man who was supposed to be Haniel's future husband. Catherine quickly grasped that he needed another excuse to quell the suspicion, and the emperor praised her for being quick on the uptake. Unexpectedly, the emperor casually mentioned that it would be troublesome if Haniel's existence were revealed, which made Catherine freeze and feel confused for a moment. When he asked why she had that reaction, A nervous Catherine quickly brushed it off as nothing. The Emperor pressed her, asking why she couldn't do what the princess could, and assured her he wouldn't ask for anything difficult. He thoughtfully considered his plan, staring at the dessert on the table. A nervous Catherine thought that if things went well, she might even get a reward. Startled by the sudden mention of a reward, Catherine listened as the Emperor told her she could decide what it would be. Humph! Catherine suddenly fired up, clenched her fists, and promised to do her best, which amused the Emperor. While walking in the garden, the Emperor explained that they needed to create a convincing illusion for the public. Catherine eagerly suggested joint public projects or inspections as a plausible cover. Filled with a new sense of purpose, Catherine asked about his plan, ready to follow his lead and do her best. The Emperor told her to come back tomorrow, and she agreed, realizing she had to honor her promise to visit him alone. The Emperor then instructed her to bring her daughter, which shocked Catherine, who clarified that he must mean the white swan, not Princess Rania. Catherine found his suggestion unexpected and admitted she had been considering a more constructive plan. The Emperor and Catherine stood awkwardly in the garden, a moment of silence between them. A faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared on the Emperor's face. A shocked Catherine internally questioned if the expressionless man had actually just smiled. As Catherine began to protest, the Emperor firmly told her no. The Emperor leaned in, asking sharply if she hadn't just claimed to be good at acting. They stood opposite each other in the rose garden, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Prince Peyton observed from a distance, commenting to his companion that the Duchess looked surprisingly innocent and defenseless. The blushing prince recalled the Emperor declaring that he would thoroughly monitor the Duchess. A flustered Catherine quickly ran away from the Emperor and his attendants, covering her face. The Emperor watched her go, stating that they had to go at least this far to maintain their cover. Haha, the Emperor smirked, confident that the witch would come to her senses, despite his attendants' worry that he was going too far without proof. The next day, Catherine presented a small duck to the seated Emperor, confirming it was the bird he had seen before. Quack! A close-up showed the trembling duck, named Rana, wearing a bright red ribbon. When the Emperor asked why she hadn't brought her, Catherine feigned ignorance while holding Haniel, as a shocked Rana looked on. Catherine gave a mischievous smile to the terrified Rana, who clearly understood the plan. Flap, flap, Rana panicked, thinking there was no way the Emperor would mistake a mallard for a swan, but Catherine held her tight, insisting it was possible. Catherine winked, tying a ribbon on Rana's head and confidently reassuring the struggling duck that he really couldn't tell the difference. The Emperor stared in disbelief, asking if that thing had a name, while a terrified Rana noticed the eyes of the hate statue on his throne. The Emperor noted the bird's color was different, but Catherine blamed it on wet feathers and pointed out the new ribbon. He curtly ordered her to get away. Catherine reflected on their conversation, judging that the Emperor wasn't a complete and utter jerk, and that correcting him was far more reliable than having a stranger on the throne. Against a backdrop of flowers, a thought emerged. It would be good to prepare for the day their baby finally turned back into a human. Catherine told the Emperor it was wrong to keep the bird cooped up after he said he would raise it, because even small creatures have feelings. But he coldly asked why. The Emperor thoughtfully recalled the duck's name, asking if it was Rana. Against a backdrop of pink roses, Catherine gave a brilliant smile. The Emperor blushed, musing that she must be incredibly bored to be naming birds, but after Catherine confirmed the name was Rana, he reluctantly agreed. All right, Rana. When Catherine claimed the child knew nothing of the world, the Emperor retorted, questioning how that was possible since she had previously said his sister was 3. Catherine realized with horror that he was confusing the duck with his 3-year-old sister. Catherine internally told herself to calm down, reasoning that the Emperor wasn't being stupid on purpose. Changing the subject, Catherine asked if he had ever called his sister's name affectionately like he just had with the duck. The Emperor dismissed the idea, asking why he would do that. Catherine and a worried Rana exchanged a look, and Catherine pressed him, asking if he only barked orders at his sister, which he confirmed without seeing the big deal, claiming no one can know another's heart. Catherine turned to the duck and asked Rana, which flustered the Emperor as she came up with a new idea. The Emperor cleverly countered, asking if she knew his name. Flustered by his inscrutable question, Catherine internally recalled his name, was wreck-hid while wondering what he was thinking. Realizing she did know his name, the Emperor said, "Ah, I see," with a hint of amusement. Catherine stared ahead, her expression unreadable yet pensive against a soft floral background. The Emperor asked what good knowing his name did for her, while she internally worried that using it freely could be considered treason. Catherine found comfort in her analysis. He might look murderous, but he wouldn't actually kill her. It was the best quality she had found in him so far. Prince Peyton and his companion arrived, with Peyton noting Catherine's presence and curiously staring at the bird on the table. Catherine introduced the duck as her daughter with a confident smile, which drew a hesitant agreement from the prince's companion. Catherine internally recognized the blonde man as the third prince, hoping he was a bit better than his brother. Snap! Their hands touched as the third prince took the duck, and Catherine felt a sudden flash of recognition. The Emperor's glare intensified as he questioned if this interruption was why the report on his sister was late, making everyone break out in a cold sweat. Catherine quickly apologized and announced it was time for her to leave. The Emperor stopped her, grabbing Rana himself and telling her to take the duck away. Catherine watched nervously as the Emperor held the trembling duck. Holding Rana, the Emperor stated affirmatively that this bird did not look like her daughter. He narrowed his red eyes, questioning if she was sure this was her daughter, while a terrified Rana realized she was seeing his eyes, not the statues. The Emperor declared that the touch was different, but Catherine pointed out that the bird was wearing the same ribbon. He recalled the feeling of holding the real daughter when he pulled her from the lake, noting the clear difference. The Emperor called out her name with a sharp and intense gaze. Catherine was cornered. Catherine apologized and lied that her real daughter had gone to school. The Emperor pointed out that the duck looked half dead, but Catherine insisted that for this bird, this was being very sociable. Catherine panicked internally, wondering if the Emperor was angry because she had lied to him. The Emperor sternly demanded to know why she had lied. He asked sarcastically if she really thought he would stoop so low as to harm her daughter. As he questioned her low opinion of him, Catherine stammered that she was just worried he would be displeased. The third prince tried to help, suggesting she must have thought the Emperor loved animals to have asked her to bring the duck, but Catherine tried to shush him. The Emperor stared at the third prince and ordered him to continue his explanation. Catherine, thinking it was all over, apologized to the duck, now calling her Celine, for getting her into this mess that would lead to their execution. The Emperor erupted in anger, asking who had mentioned execution, leaving a baffled Catherine with question marks all over her head. A flustered Catherine began praising Celine's charm, but the Emperor impatiently cut her off, telling her to take the duck away. Deciding to take the opportunity to retreat, Catherine grabbed the duck and turned to leave. The Emperor sternly ordered her to bring the real one tomorrow, adding that he would see then if she was what he expected. Walking away, Catherine asked herself if he was serious. She sighed, then told the duck not to say oui, because she was the one who had made this mess. Outside, Catherine celebrated her narrow escape, realizing it was her tearful acting and talent that had saved them. The Emperor watched her from the window, muttering that if she was going to act, she should at least do it properly. Prince Peyton observed that the Duchess was terrified, while his companion reasoned that anyone would cry under the Emperor's pressure. The Emperor smirked, musing that perhaps he was the only one who could see through her true nature. A black swan instructed a group of ducklings to put their heads in the water to find food, and they chirped yes in response. A duck named Mac questioned why the swan Rana wasn't trying to swim, but another reminded him that she had fallen in and sunk before. Rana wondered what kind of swan couldn't swim, internally denying it, while a duckling declared that she couldn't swim. A tearful Rana was surrounded by a powerful aura, insisting to herself that that wasn't the reason. The black swan gently asks if Rana is okay, and the little white bird flaps its wings to confirm it's fine. Rana puffs out her chest and proudly insists she can swim because her mom told her she's good at it. But the black swan seems a bit skeptical. Watching the happy little bird, the black swan remarks that Rana must really love her mom. The black swan leans in and asks if Rana would like to live with her mom forever if she wants to, a question that confuses the little bird. An ornate text box defines forever as being together until the very end, never to be parted. The black swan spots Catherine approaching from a distance, silently noting that her mother might have a hard time giving her a hug today. The Swan worries that Rana will be disappointed if her tired mother can't embrace her after a long day. But Rana spots her and happily cries out, "It's Mommy." Catherine approaches with a gentle smile, calling out, "Sweetheart, Mommy's here, Rana." As the Black Swan watches by the lake, Catherine holds Haniel tightly, promising to always be on her side. Catherine playfully tickles Haniel, asking what she should say when she does this, and the little bird responds twice, "I love you forever, Mommy." As Catherine and Haniel playfully roll around on the bed, a nearby duck named Celine coolly comments that they're the same as always. Celine tells a melancholy Catherine to stop pretending, saying that it might fool the Emperor, but not her. Catherine explains that she has to look sad, or people will gossip if she smiles. A hand gently strokes Haniel, who blinks and sweetly declares that she likes Mr. Darwin because he is kind. Haniel shows her mother a chart that ranks Lady Mello alongside the terrifying Emperor brother, far scarier than her original nanny, which shocks Catherine. Catherine fantasizes about the handsome and enthusiastic Mr. Darwin, thinking that if only the Emperor were a quarter as kind as him. Catherine asks Haniel about her brothers, and the little bird firmly states that her brother is always so mean. Catherine tries to find a silver lining, asking if there's at least one good brother, but Haniel only confirms that she doesn't hate all of her brothers. Haniel clarifies that she likes all her brothers, with the sole exception of the Emperor, much to Catherine's dismay. A frustrated Catherine holds her head, thinking that not even a beaten child would be this terrified of someone. The narrator explains that on top of all this, Haniel now needs to be liked by the strict headmistress. Haniel sweetly asks her mother if she has to go back to school tomorrow. Amidst honking, Catherine approaches a large and aggressive white goose with a basket of food. The goose angrily rejects the snack, seeing it as a bribe, but a frustrated Catherine retorts that she can't read its mind and it was going to accept anyway. Catherine dejectedly admits she was just foolishly trying to ask the goose to look after Haniel, which prompts Celine to call out to her. A worried Celine urges Catherine to go see the Emperor, asking what she'll do if she doesn't take the princess. Catherine dismisses the idea, explaining Lady Mello's strictness and Haniel's vow to never see her eldest brother again. The duck, Celine, dutifully follows behind Catherine's elegant black dress. Arriving at the garden, the Emperor questions Catherine about why she has come empty-handed again. Catherine faces the Emperor, respectfully addressing him as Your Majesty. The Emperor and Catherine face each other in a beautiful garden of white roses. Catherine nervously wonders if he's hesitating to go with just the two of them, but he looks flustered, and she quickly says no. Catherine cheerfully beckons the Emperor over, while he complains that all the hills look the same and questions why they have to walk so far. Catherine points to a bird in the distance by the lake, but the Emperor grimly recognizes it as his sister. The bird is huddled and unable to lift its head. Catherine, clearly annoyed, reminds herself to be patient and focus on today's real goal. The Emperor sneers, commenting that the bird looks like it will die before the day is over, while Catherine insists he doesn't believe how loving she is. The Emperor temporarily concedes, saying, "Fine, let's say that's the case." The Emperor leans in to challenge Catherine, asking if she's afraid that he's right about her daughter. The Emperor proposes a bet, suggesting they decide the stakes later. As a sad Haniel watches from the water, Catherine announces they need to practice. When he asks what for, she explains they're going to rehearse how to approach a child so that Princess Rana will surely open up. The Emperor scoffs at the idea, but Catherine argues that he just needs to win the bet, regardless of how the bird feels. She takes his hand and assures him the task isn't difficult. Holding his hand, Catherine explains that if the princess were scared, she wouldn't have even ventured this far. Catherine demonstrates by gently touching her own cheek, instructing the Emperor to press lightly as well, while he stares at her intently. When Catherine asks if it's too hard, the Emperor snaps back not to be ridiculous, which she takes as a good sign. Catherine, with a playful smile, suggests they start the real thing, while the Emperor nervously mutters, "Don't press," to himself. The Emperor internally notes that the Duchess is trying to provoke him, but as an empty shell, he finds her every move both suspicious and amusing. A proud goose appears, catching the Emperor's attention. He is stunned when it affectionately nuzzles him. Convinced it must be Catherine's daughter, Catherine urges the Emperor to hurry, while he internally complains that there isn't a single normal bird by this lake. The goose gives a deep, respectful bow at the Emperor's feet. The Emperor flatly states that the goose is dead, prompting a shocked Catherine to plead with him not to say that. The Emperor's gloved hand gently strokes the head of the seemingly dead goose. Although the Emperor still thinks the bird is dead, a blushing Catherine marvels internally, praising it as an unprecedented honor for His Majesty to greet her daughter himself. The Emperor decides he's practiced enough, while Catherine perfectly assures him his performance was flawless, and the goose radiates a loving aura. As Catherine starts to walk away, the Emperor calls out to her, asking where she's going. She calmly reassures him that she's not running away. Catherine confidently leads the way, deciding to strike while the iron is hot, just as the Emperor starts calling her name. Catherine runs toward the lake, cheerfully announcing, "Sweetheart, Mommy's here." The little white bird, Haniel, lifts her head from her gloomy mood, instantly brightening up. Catherine lovingly embraces Haniel amidst a bush of vibrant yellow roses, while the Emperor watches intently from a distance. Thump, thump, the Emperor clutches his chest, feeling a palpitation as he watches the tender reunion. Holding Haniel, Catherine triumphantly faces the Emperor, smiling as she asks, "See, I was right, wasn't I?" Haniel proudly shows her mother a piece of jerky, explaining that Lady Mello gave it to her. Catherine praises Haniel for receiving the special jerky from Lady Mello, a treat none of the other children got. Catherine asks if Lady Mello praised her, and a proud Haniel confirms it. She says she was a perfect lady. The narrator mentions that Haniel's coldness is just like her brother's, and Catherine recalls her daughter disappearing before the closing ceremony. Catherine reassures Haniel that Lady Mello was in a good mood, because Haniel was a well-behaved lady. However, she adds that it was also because Haniel's big brother put in a good word, which fills the little bird's eyes with shock and anger. A terrified Haniel panics, demanding to know why her brother is at her house and insisting it belongs only to her and her mom. Still panicked, Haniel worries her brother is there to take her away and questions why he was talking to Lady Mello. Catherine gently reassures Haniel, suggesting her brother wouldn't come all the way to the school just to see a child he dislikes. When Catherine asks if Haniel wants to see him, the little bird nervously clarifies if she means the Emperor brother. Catherine suggests they go see if he really dislikes her, and Haniel cautiously asks if it will be just the two of them. Both the duck Celine and the little bird Haniel look up in surprise, calling out to Catherine. Catherine, with a serious expression, instructs the birds to go back inside first. Walking outside alone, Catherine calls out into the night, "Is anyone there?" Under the starry sky, she hesitates, unsure if she's made the right choice. The narrator reflects that the other girls, Rania and Rebecca, would have surely run over full of energy. The Emperor appears behind Catherine, playfully observing that she truly is fearless. A startled Catherine whips around, just as Haniel cries out "Mommy" and grabs her dress. The Emperor steadies Catherine, who quickly explains she wasn't running away, but just came out first because he wasn't in the house. She nervously insists it's true, but he calmly reminds her that she can't just leave because she wants to. Catherine lets out a light laugh, touches her cheek, and continues her demonstration. The Emperor suddenly pulls her close, gently caressing her cheek, which startles her, as he asks if this is how it's done. Flustered by his proximity, Catherine stammers her approval, saying it's just right. Standing side by side in the moonlit garden, Catherine praises the Emperor for doing a good job. After her confirmation, he gently drapes a red cloak over her shoulders, telling her she did well too. Touching her cheek, a blushing Catherine is surprised at how good he is at this. She triumphantly declares that she won the bet, reasoning that he didn't see the whole thing through to the end. He turns to her with a serious expression, calmly stating that he saw it. A relieved Catherine admits she wouldn't have had anything to offer if she'd lost, but he thinks to himself that she's wrong. With a knowing look, he says he knows exactly what he wants. In the palace, Rania asks Rebecca if she's sure she saw everything, and Rebecca confirms she did. Rania scolds Rebecca for messing with the dress she just tried on, telling her to stop since she'll only wear it once. Rania grabs Rebecca's arm, questioning her sister's strange words, before declaring that she spied on Catherine and found nothing unusual. Rania reports that Catherine just walked around the lake, didn't meet anyone, and didn't get close. The Winter Palace. Rebecca scoffs at the idea that a woman like Catherine would dare to dream of meeting His Majesty. Rebecca insists she was hiding and watching, never taking her eyes off Catherine, and confirms no one entered or left the villa. When Rebecca points out that the other nobles, including Rania, went to the Winter Palace, Rania corrects her, saying that actually no one went through the gate. Rebecca suggests asking the administrator, Viscount Dion. Rania dismisses the idea, wondering what the Emperor is thinking. Rebecca internally weighs her options. Noticing that Ronan isn't around, she must use Rebecca and vows to give Rebecca anything she wants as long as she isn't deceived. An aide informs Rashid that he has brought Catherine, who is currently with Tenon, and warns that Tenon's dog might cause trouble. Rashid asks about Kirill, and the aide reports that his second younger brother is still busy with state affairs. The aide speculates that the Grand Duchess must hold a grudge against Rashid, who listens with a blank expression. The aide further explains that it's understandable for Catherine to be frustrated, as the wedding was so modest and everything was handled by Kirill. Recalling a loving couple, the aide nervously claims the Grand Duke and Grand Duchess get along wonderfully, then worries about Catherine's rudeness. In a panic, the aide begs Rashid not to execute her for Kirill's sake, which makes Rashid wonder what's wrong with them. Rashid announces a grand ceremony for the Duchess after the mourning period ends, but a younger brother immediately objects, saying there's an order of seniority. The boy argues that if the Emperor hasn't had a formal wedding, his younger siblings can't either, which clearly infuriates Rashid. Angered by the boy's innocent malice, Rashid decides to go see the magicians again. He orders the boy to start investigating any recent information about Haniel, and the boy accepts the task. Rashid calls out the boy's name, Peyton, who looks up. After Rashid angrily tells him to get out, a relieved Peyton walks away, thinking that the Emperor is back to his usual self and isn't cursed. Rashid stands alone, gazing out the window with a determined expression. As they walk toward the palace, Haniel asks Catherine if she's scared to meet her brother, and Catherine admits she is. Haniel sobs, asking what to do if the Emperor scolds or kicks her, and Catherine promises to immediately scold and kick him right back. When Haniel asks what if he swallows her, Catherine laughs and reassures her that he's not that much of a monster. Catherine offers to go alone, but Haniel bravely insists on going with her. Holding a trembling Haniel, Catherine reflects that her child isn't usually this timid. Catherine reminds Haniel of the praise she received from Lady Mello and Mr. Darren, and Haniel happily thinks to herself that she likes Darren. Now wearing a cute red bow, a determined Haniel calls out for her mom, but Catherine says it's too soon to act like this. Deciding this won't work, Catherine starts to turn back home, but a voice suddenly demands to know where she's going. Rashid appears behind her, demanding to know why she's leaving when she just arrived, which startles Catherine. Flustered by his sudden appearance, Catherine remembers that she should probably greet him. Rashid says there's no need for formalities, but she hesitates, unsure how to respond. Catherine clutches her dress, thinking that dealing with him is overwhelming even without Haniel present. As Catherine asks what he wants, insisting she's exhausted, Rashid cuts her off, clarifying that he never asked her to do anything, that he said he would do it, and questions how far she plans to push herself. A black-haired woman dismisses the intimate moment, thinking that a blonde man just touched her cheek. He questions her presence, and she confirms that the little creature is in fact her daughter. Thump, thump. Her heart races as he leans in, their faces inches apart. She looks down worriedly at the trembling, bird-like creature in her hands. He wonders why the creature is suddenly acting so strange, and she begins to explain hesitantly. The source of the creature's fear is revealed. They have arrived at his magnificent mansion. The creature cries out in fear of the Emperor's celestial sword, prompting the woman to ask His Majesty to put it away. Connecting the dots, she asks if the Emperor also had the sword with him during his last visit to the palace. He confirms her suspicion, while the terrified creature whimpers for its mother. She asks why he brought the sword, and he explains he was simply told the princess would like it. A mischievous vision of the Emperor giving a thumbs up appears, as if justifying his troublemaking nature, which greatly annoys her. A blond man looks distressed, and Catherine ponders his earlier words, while he contemplates that getting rid of one person won't solve the root problem. A list of candidates shows the first and fourth brothers have been ruled out, with a specific warning to be wary of a man named Tenon for his shallow knowledge. Tenon boasts that only he can wield his magnificent sword, infused with divine power, though he admits it might scare children. Catherine agrees, admitting that even she finds the sword a bit intimidating. He swiftly begins to draw the sword from its sheath. Catherine grabs his arm in alarm, pleading with him not to go too far with his precious sword. He calmly looks down at her, asking if she's still scared. Holding Haniel, the woman sees this as a key opportunity for the little princess to get closer to her brother. A child's voice asks what's wrong, and the woman points to an object on the emperor's shoulder. The emperor shows her an ornate brooch, a protected gift from his mother's family, which she thinks looks out of place. Whoosh! To her shock, he casually tosses the precious heirloom aside. She introduces the now less adorned emperor to Haniel, trying to reassure her that he's not so scary after all. He bluntly asks what's next, accusing her of using her daughter as an excuse to see him. She looks away, denying his accusation and insisting she doesn't care what he does. The emperor presses for the truth, and she internally admits that she might actually care about his actions. He questions the real reason for her blush, leaving her flustered and speechless. He invites her to sit, while privately pondering just how close he should allow himself to get to her. After sitting down, she explains that she has to hold the child herself because she doesn't adapt well to unfamiliar places. The emperor listens with fascinated interest as she describes having to hold the child even while sleeping. Embarrassed by his gaze, she abruptly changes the subject by asking for the name of his missing princess. She probes further, asking if he intentionally tried to scare the princess during his visit. She smiles, internally praying that her suspicion isn't true. He nonchalantly considers that maybe he did intend to scare her, an answer that makes her tremble in shock. She is completely stunned, realizing it's utterly futile to explain the situation to him. She asks if he wanted to make the child cry, but he is dismissive, claiming the princess cries whenever she sees him anyway. He pauses, a sudden realization dawning on him as he finally understands the point she's been trying to make. She rephrases, asking if he at least doesn't dislike Princess Haniel, to which he quietly admits he doesn't. Overjoyed and relieved by his admission, she clasps her hands and beams. The emperor calmly asks why his feelings toward the princess are so important. She insists he must have gone to see Haniel out of concern and curiosity, refuting his claims of indifference. She happily explains her theory. The princess simply misunderstood his intentions and was surprised, not scared. A brief silence falls between them after her enthusiastic analysis of the situation. She coaxes Haniel to get down from her shoulder, but the little one whimpers for her mom. With her mother's gentle encouragement, Haniel finds the courage to agree to try approaching her brother. Haniel takes her first brave step, her mother silently encouraging her. As Haniel toddles past the table, her mother remarks that every great journey begins with a single step. She proudly announces Haniel's success, telling the emperor the little princess came all this way just for him. Seeing Haniel's mustered courage, she becomes emotional and feels an unexpected twinge of sympathy for the cold emperor. The emperor tells her to just laugh, but she covers her mouth, trying to hold it in, insisting it's not funny. He calls her Catherine, seeing through her facade and telling her to stop hiding her laughter. Haniel suddenly turns fierce, vowing to protect Catherine, which shocks her mother and makes the emperor wonder where her shyness went. Catherine is stunned, but secretly grateful for his dense and indifferent personality, which prevents the situation from escalating. The emperor asks if Haniel's outburst means she's feeling better, and Catherine agrees, crediting his willingness to open up. Catherine explains that Haniel's pecking is actually a sign of affection. Though the emperor remains skeptical, she cleverly connects it to his previous visit, arguing that if he weren't truly interested, he wouldn't have gone. The emperor sits with a stern expression, Haniel now calmly on his lap. Haniel defiantly refuses the emperor's command to repeat the affectionate gesture, prompting Catherine to muse that the siblings are truly one of kind. Catherine suggests to the emperor that beginnings are always difficult, and not just with getting close to her daughter. Trembling, he clenches his fist and quietly affirms that he understands. her meaning. He pulls out a chair for her, claiming he's improving, which makes Catherine blush and inwardly marvel at the unprecedented gesture. She happily expresses her disbelief at being able to bring their treasure to a place like this. The Emperor looks at her seriously, questioning why this brings her so much joy. He presses her, asking if her daughter is her everything and questioning if she has any other family or important things in her life. She looks up at him, caught off guard, and clarifies if he's asking about her life. She internally reflects on her difficult past and her current lonely existence as the widow of a demi-human, a life she doesn't consider happy. Despite her melancholy thoughts, she puts on a bright smile and simply says, "It's good." When he asks what's good, she explains that she's happy to have a stable home and to be able to see the beautiful lake. She continues, listing that she's happy he doesn't want to kill her, isn't angry, and had a peaceful day with Haniel. She concludes that while she's grateful for it all, she realizes too many of these good things are related to him. He chides her for not finishing her sentence, while she secretly thinks that she's happy she'll be leaving him and going home soon. The creature Haniel peeks out from behind a pillar as the narrator recounts her destiny to become a true princess. A title card marks the end of the chapter as Catherine thanks the Emperor and prepares to leave. He questions her departure, but Haniel steps between them, protectively telling him to stop. Thump, thump, thump. Haniel fiercely protects her mother, telling the Emperor she's not interested in him, which makes Catherine gasp in surprise. Catherine stares in disbelief, wondering what on earth she's witnessing. She panics internally, comparing the intimidating dog to a monster, while the Emperor asks if this is the type of animal she likes. Catherine drops to her knees to comfort a trembling Haniel, who is whimpering about the scary puppy. The Emperor watches in confusion, reminding her that she said she wanted to see a dog before, but Catherine has no memory of it. A young man holding a leash introduces himself as the fourth prince and mentions the animal is a rare breed. With a flash of angry recognition, Catherine identifies the fourth prince. She stands with her arms crossed, glaring at the prince, convinced he's the culprit. She directly confronts the fourth prince, accusing him of being the one who scared Haniel. As she stands silently, both the fourth prince and the Emperor call out to her in confusion, her face obscured by her hair. The Emperor realizes the fourth prince's dog is the one, while the prince expresses shock that His Majesty is considering naming it. The Emperor commands the dog to stop, calming it by stroking its head, while Catherine wonders if he's using a spell. Catherine asks about one of the Emperor's earlier comments, asking what he meant by beyond human. The fourth prince assures her the dog is harmless, as it only obeys him, and mentions it will be useful in the upcoming hunting competition. Catherine's eyes widen at the mention of a hunting competition. The prince is surprised she doesn't know about the northern tradition, but she reflects on her isolation. The Emperor calls her name, getting her attention. The Emperor instructs a man named Tenon to take the dog back, but Catherine quickly objects, insisting she hasn't seen enough. With innocent intentions, Catherine finds herself captivated by the magnificent dog. Unable to let go, she reaches out to pet it, thinking it would be a shame to separate them now. Catherine gives Rashid a small pouch of dog food, and he asks what's in it. She explains it's a snack she prepared for Rana and thought the dog would like it too. After shyly admitting she made the snack herself, Rashid tells her to feed it to the dog, but Peyton objects in alarm. Catherine sarcastically asks if she looks like someone who would put a curse in the food. As the dog happily devours the snack, a stunned Peyton asks Catherine what she gave it. Catherine simply calls it a snack, while Peyton marvels that the dog has never eaten so enthusiastically, suspecting a secret ingredient. She coldly asks if he's implying she did something wrong, scaring him into a stammered denial. Seeing the dog's disappointment, Catherine apologizes, saying she can't give it anymore. The dog suddenly turns on Peyton with a threatening growl, while he scolds it for disrespecting a prince. Catherine gently comforts the dejected dog, while Peyton complains that he gave it everything. Catherine holds the teary-eyed dog and declares she will give such a wonderful child name. Peyton is left speechless by the scene. Rashid asks Catherine if she wants to name the dog, offering to grant her that right. Catherine is completely caught off guard by his unexpected offer. Rashid, with a hint of a knowing smile, watches her reaction. Catherine beams, suggesting she could find inspiration by spending the night with the dog. As they walk, Catherine reassures a wary Rashid, pointing out how much the dog likes her. Rashid warns her that the dog has ancient demonic blood and dangerous primal instincts. He recalls how she didn't hesitate to hand the same beast over to a baby. Unfazed, Catherine confidently states that animals just tend to like her. Rashid finds the dog's immediate affection for her strange, while Catherine playfully redefines it as a handsome, noble puppy. Catherine feigns concern, claiming the rumor of the emperor visiting her villa is too much for a loyal noble like her to bear. The emperor scoffs, revealing he knows what she's thinking and commenting that she has that line memorized. The emperor stands confidently. Amidst a shower of falling feathers, Catherine, holding Haniel, hesitantly began to explain her current situation to him, but he cut her off with a simple and calm, "That's enough." As he repeated that he understood and that she had said more than enough, she detected a strange and elusive emotion in his voice. Standing by the horse, she wondered if his feelings were like hers, uncomfortable with the inability to let go, but she then dismissed it as a strange illusion. As he prepared to leave, the emperor told her a large dog would be sent back tomorrow and warned her not to blame him if any accidents occurred. Catherine gave the dog a command: listen to her and do not bite under any circumstances. The emperor patted the dog's head, simply calling it dog, which seemed to confuse the animal. He leaned in close to the dog and issued a chilling warning, promising severe consequences if it dared to disobey orders or harm Catherine and her daughter. From behind the door, Catherine calmly assured the emperor that it was fine. She gently stroked the now docile beast. Back in her room, a maid screamed in terror upon seeing what Catherine had brought home, but Catherine quieted her to avoid frightening the new addition. One of the dogs began to growl menacingly, and Catherine softly asked what was wrong. Enveloped in a dark and thorny aura, Catherine sneered at the growling dog, asking if it sensed something. With a burst of powerful energy, the room filled with illusions of swans and terrified dogs. The scene shifts with a recruitment notice. The scene cuts to an exterior shot of an elegant villa. Inside the villa, a meal is set on the table next to a basket containing Haniel. Catherine orders someone to come out and eat, chiding the growling dog for being too stubborn. She scolds the dog at the dining table, insisting that meals should be eaten together. Catherine tells the dog, whose fur is standing on end, to stop bluffing, ignoring its attempts at intimidation. She jokingly worries that others might think she hit the dog, while a small cygnet retorts, asking if she had. In the tense standoff, a giant black swan spreads its wings, determined to establish dominance over the dog. The swan challenges the growling dog, asking if it intends to fight back. With a flash of power, the swan provokes the dog to try something, threatening to make things worse by telling their master. The swan backs down for now, but warns the dog it will be watching how it treats her baby. Back at the table, Catherine comforts the dog, acknowledging it was only following its instincts and orders, but also points out that the princess was frightened. Catherine offers to hold her baby, while the mother swan's inner voice encourages Haniel to make the dog go away. The dog wears an expression of utter desperation, clearly having something to say. Forgetting it couldn't speak, Catherine tells the frantically gesturing dog to explain slowly. An attendant expresses reluctance to deal with animals, but Catherine orders her to bring it out, then calls Celine's name. As the dog and a small bird, named Celine, gesture wildly, Catherine presses them about what's wrong and whether the food has gone bad. The goose relays the dog's message, explaining that it must feel very unfair from its perspective too. Learning that the dog was only following an order to stay close, she demands to know who gave the command. Hearing the order came from the fourth prince, she becomes furious, condemning him for the chaos he's causing everyone. She's surprised to learn the dog wasn't actually barking, but coughing nervously because of the emperor's presence. The goose flaps its wings, insisting there is one more important thing. What the dog wanted to say. In Haniel's vision, the dog confesses that it has always found her really cute. To Catherine's confusion, the dog now finds the cheerfully hopping Haniel even cuter than before. Haniel urgently demands to be let out of the basket, wanting to approach the dog on her own. She bravely toddles across the floor toward the large dog, who patiently lies down to greet her. Another woman, accompanied by a goose, joyfully comments that her younger brother took 2 steps this time instead of the usual one. The dog suddenly throws its front paws into the air playfully, This startles the goose next to it. Its enthusiastic movement startles Haniel and the goose, causing them to tumble into a flustered heap. In a sunlit room, a voiceover reminds her that it's time for the princess to go to school. The dog lays down the law, warning the goose that a brief conversation doesn't make them family. Catherine addresses a goose as Celine, who warns her that the dog's huge paws could accidentally crush the princess. Catherine has a flash of inspiration and shows the group of confused animals a large basket. During a formal meal, a young man observes that the emperor doesn't look well and asks about it. The emperor dismisses the concern, attributing his appearance to a sleepless night and telling him not to take it to heart. An attendant reports that all is quiet at the villa, to which the emperor gives a simple, cold acknowledgement. The fourth prince worries internally that although Catherine has pacified the beast, its wild nature remains a threat. He recounts finding his eldest brother, the emperor, standing by the lake at dawn with a troubled expression. Back at the table, the fourth prince asks the emperor if he plans to take the dog with him. As the emperor gets up to leave, his brothers ask where he is going and offer to accompany him. He coldly refuses them, telling them to simply fulfill their respective duties while he is away. He reminds them of the upcoming hunting tournament and the royal dignity they are expected to uphold. As he departs with his retinue, he announces he is heading to the edge of the forest to meet a mage. The two remaining princes look worried, one of them stating helplessly that they have no choice. Rashid, with a charming smile, announces that he will bring it over himself. As Rashid stands confidently, a surprised Peyton asks him why he is smiling. By a tranquil lake, Rashid asks Peyton if the ancient beast servants have ever harmed humans, and Peyton confirms they only attack enemies. Rashid presses further about their behavior toward other animals. Peyton reasons that the duchess would have surely told them if any accidents had occurred, adding that it's better for an animal to be hurt than for her to be. Rashid sternly disagrees, suddenly filled with worry and regret for allowing her to be alone with the animal. He reflects grimly that this is the first time he has wished to turn back time. A woman with flowing white hair suddenly appears, calling out to His Majesty. Rashid turns to face the newcomer, calmly asking why she is here. Thank you for joining us for the wedding of Sarah and David, Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Grandview Estate, with dinner and dancing to follow. The scene shifts, and the emperor, standing elsewhere, formally asks a lady why she has come to this place. An elegant woman with long white hair appears, greeting the emperor and noting his early walk. A close-up shot highlights the beautiful and otherworldly flowers blooming at her feet. He presses his question, and she explains shyly that this lake is part of her family's territory, a path she often walked with her late mother, the former empress. She goes on to lament that a walk here always makes her most complicated worries disappear. The emperor turns to her coldly, implying that her worries must be many. She speaks of the hardship of taking over her late father's duties without time to mourn, needing to remain strong for her people. Her expression becomes resolute, showing a quiet determination. He reminds her that she is only acting as regent for now and has not been formally confirmed as the successor. He points out that if the burden is too great, her stepmother is technically more qualified to be regent. She agrees that her mother's help would be invaluable, prompting him to ask why her mother hasn't stepped forward. She claims her mother has been unwell and wishes to be alone since her father's death, stating it is an easily verifiable fact. He looks at her skeptically, questioning why she would think he knew anything about her mother's condition. In front of the princes, she appears flustered, explaining there are rumors that her mother frequently visits the Winter Palace to assist him. He scoffs and laughs, finding the rumor amusing, that the supposedly unwell mother is able to help him with state affairs. She sighs, feigning concern, and worries aloud that her mother's involvement might interfere with his work. He dismisses her false concern, asking why she doesn't visit her stepmother herself, then declares he does not interfere in the affairs of nobles. He clenches his fist, warning that matters involving the dignity of the imperial family are a different story, and confirms her stepmother is assisting him at his request. With a sly smile, she promises to pay more attention to her mother's condition. He cuts her off, announcing he will personally investigate the matter in detail, which makes her cry out in alarm. She quickly regains her composure, sweetly asking if he thinks his own eyes are duller than those of the local nobility, before conceding. She smoothly thanks him for his personal attention toward her grieving mother. He asks if she is referring to the Duke, which she affirms, expressing gratitude for the Emperor's care for the widow of a loyal subject. The princes watch from the side as a thought reveals her words are a political trap, emphasizing Catherine's public identity to manipulate the Emperor. The Emperor turns away, stating that if she insists, he will accept her thanks. Her expression turns sinister and radiant as she adds a chilling condition. After I die, he replies coldly that they won't be meeting before then anyway, adding to the mysterious tension. He takes a step toward her, commenting that she seems to know him well and wonders what else she knows. As the Emperor and his brothers walk past, her confident facade finally crumbles, leaving her standing frozen. The scene cuts to a school, where excited ducklings ask Rana if she knows the mysterious new dog. Catherine, holding Haniel in her swan form, encourages her to introduce her new friend, the little black dog. The ducklings gather in awe around the proud dog, who stands patiently with a basket on its back. To prove the dog's gentle nature, Haniel nestles against its face, and Catherine calls out that it doesn't bite. Surrounded by flowers, Haniel and the ducklings celebrate their gentle new friend. Catherine asks Rana for the dog's name, and the other ducklings eagerly suggest it should be given a cute one. One duckling asks why she chose the name Brother, and another explains it's because he's strong and cool, just like a real older brother. Haniel, who once thought all older brothers were scary, now looks at the dog with hope in her eyes. Seeing a group of children gathered around a large swan, Catherine calls out for someone named Mr. Darren. Mr. Darren expresses his relief at seeing a girl named Rana getting along well with her friends, which makes Catherine blush with pleasure. Noticing the new addition, Mr. Darren turns to ask the Duchess how the dog got there. Catherine explains the dog is just staying for a little while as it pants happily beside her. She sternly reprimands the dog, reminding it that this is a school and it must behave. As a group of ducklings asks to ride the dog with Rana, Catherine notices the dog is thoroughly enjoying the attention. Catherine strolls happily through the flowers while the proud dog carries the basket with Haniel. The Emperor's brothers, observing from a distance, are stunned, with one convinced she used black magic. The Emperor starts walking toward her, stopping his brother's attempts to hold him back with a short command. The brothers marvel at how a demonic beast could become so obedient overnight, realizing the muzzle they brought is useless. As the Emperor strides toward Catherine's group, one of his brothers mutters, "Who would have thought I'd live to see this?" He stops, watching her organize. A line of ducklings next to the docile dog, perplexed by the strange scene. He walks up and speaks directly to Catherine, demanding to know what she is doing there. She greets him again with a charming smile, playfully asking why he's using such a serious tone. As she speaks, the once fearsome dog wags its tail enthusiastically, clearly happy to see him. The Emperor, clearly flustered by her casual teasing, turns his head away in confusion. She moves closer, playfully insisting she definitely saw him smile just now. He awkwardly grabs her arm, trying to cover it up by stammering an explanation that he wasn't saying she shouldn't smile. They gaze at each other in quiet intimacy, while she thinks to herself that all she wanted was to tease him just once. As he looks down at her, a gentle, almost imperceptible smile finally appears on his face. Caught in the unexpected moment, she looks up with wide eyes and asks what they should do now. Among the flowers, they gaze at each other affectionately as the intimate moment continues. The Emperor leans in too close, startling Catherine as he presses to know who she plans to introduce this time. He leans in and playfully asks if she means her daughter, while she anxiously wonders where Haniel has gone. With a splash, she stumbles backward into the water. He tells her to slow down. He grabs her hand to steady her, intensely demanding she answer his question. Catherine, flustered by his sudden aggression, asks him what's wrong with him today. Haniel pops out of the basket, excitedly announcing the Emperor has visited many times. Catherine asks what's wrong, and Haniel sobs that the Emperor wants to take her mommy away. Catherine, holding a crying Haniel, formally greets the Emperor. He tells Haniel her weak body can't handle such stress, but she just calls him a bad guy. Haniel declares the Emperor is ugly, leaving him speechless while Catherine is inwardly mortified. She continues to scold him for teasing her mother, prompting him to ask Catherine what's wrong with her daughter now. With an awkward smile, Catherine bluntly relays Haniel's opinion. He's ugly and has a rotten personality. He asks what gave Haniel that idea, wondering if being a bird has warped her perception. When he calls her name, Haniel yells "Mommy," and Catherine decides it's best if they don't look at each other. Desperate to appease her daughter, Catherine blurts out that maybe the Emperor looks handsome today. Under the Emperor's gaze, she gently pinches Haniel's cheek to quiet her. Later, Catherine confirms Haniel is still angry, and Haniel indignantly complains that the Emperor isn't cool at all. Catherine explains that Rashid came to see Haniel, but she denies it, confusing her mother. In a quiet moment, Catherine appears preoccupied with Haniel by her side. Haniel correctly guesses that Rashid came to see her mom, which Catherine enthusiastically confirms. When Haniel worries he will take her away, Catherine firmly promises she isn't going anywhere. She privately thinks that Rashid's brotherly concern for Haniel is just an excuse to see her. Lying together, Catherine and Haniel decide she must stay by the lake because she cannot leave. Haniel looks up at her worriedly, asking why she has to stay by the lake forever. Catherine reflects on her lonely fate, with no family and no one to invite her to join them. She recalls her cursed life, one she has resigned herself to being alone in. She fantasizes about what it would be like if someone finally reached out and asked her to go with them. Back in reality, a confused Haniel still doesn't understand why her mother doesn't find Rashid ugly. Despite what she says, thoughts of him linger. Catherine looks at Haniel and thinks to herself that it's impossible for anyone to be more handsome than her older brother. Haniel flaps her wings cheerfully, and Catherine dismisses the thought, concluding that Rashid doesn't care about his appearance. The scene cuts to a bustling town square. The square is decorated with festival banners. In a lavish room, an attendant informs His Majesty that they have arrived. Rashid stares at his reflection in the mirror, anxiously wondering if he is really as ugly as Haniel said. He quickly dismisses the thought with a slight smile, deciding not to worry about it. A brief flashback shows Catherine trying to convince Haniel that he is handsome. In a carriage, Rashid notices the bustling crowd outside and asks about the noise nearby. The nobles are excitedly talking about the upcoming hunting tournament, the biggest event of the season. After Rashid asks if a certain woman will be attending, his attendant explains that the tournament is less of a real hunt and more of a social gathering. In another location, an attendant directs the fourth prince's attention to something outside the window. He explains that noble families are frantically preparing gowns for the hunting festival, which is tantamount to a debutante ball. The fourth prince specifically asks about married women, but the attendant says young ladies are the main event. When the prince asks what someone in mourning would wear, the attendant is completely baffled. The fourth prince, now in a hooded cloak, tells the attendant to forget it and prepares to leave. He insists on going alone, telling the chattering attendant to do something more useful, like prepare dinner. The attendant completely misunderstands, fantasizing about a giant roasted bird, thinking the prince is worried about the party's catering. After the attendant notes there are only 3 princes, the fourth prince dismisses the comment, saying it can't be helped. With renewed determination, he announces he must go himself to coordinate with the others. As he steps out, he decisively crosses the bustling town square with a clear purpose. He thinks to himself that while Tenon and Peyton usually track Haniel, he felt he had to come himself today. In a flashback, Catherine proudly shows the Emperor Haniel spreading her wings, comparing her to the most fragile thing she's ever seen. The Emperor recalls a vivid memory. Haniel as a baby, her cries growing louder and more unsettling the closer he got. He recalls Haniel's fragile body and the haunting memory in her eyes. The fourth prince silently vows that, at the very least, she must be raised properly. In a flashback, a younger Catherine admits she doesn't know what it means to raise someone properly. Troubled by his thoughts, the fourth prince sighs, his expression heavy. The fourth prince and his cloaked companion arrive on horseback, greeting his brother. One of the brothers expresses skepticism about the duchess, but the fourth prince dismisses his concerns. He sternly repeats that he doesn't care what they think, silencing his brother with a look. He declares the conversation over. In another location, a woman with long, lavender hair thoughtfully examines a box of exquisite jewelry. As her companions chatter, she signals for quiet. One of them asks Rebecca why she is just staring instead of approaching someone. A woman with orange hair suggests Rebecca go talk to the mysterious cloaked figure, but Rebecca scoffs at the wild idea. The women continue to gossip, questioning why a proper gentleman would hide his identity or associate with vagrants. The lavender-haired woman, annoyed by their chatter, listens as her companion expresses concern that an acting lord hasn't contacted his fiancée. The lavender-haired woman dismisses the concern, stating it's her sister's business, but her companion questions if things have been going well for the lady lately. The lavender-haired woman, stunned by the insinuation, demands to know what she means. The orange-haired woman smirks, revealing that everyone is talking about how His Majesty is spending a great deal of time with her stepmother. She further explains that since the duchess is forbidden from receiving visitors, people are now sending gifts to the stepmother, whose requests are considered more legitimate. The lavender-haired woman, enraged, shouts that the stepmother is not her mother and fumes at the arrogance of a mere marquis's daughter. Her companions are taken aback by her sudden, fierce outburst. The orange-haired woman patronizingly calls her Eloise and offers to relay her feelings to her sister, but Eloise appears flustered. As Eloise tries to back down, the orange-haired woman coldly orders her to move aside. Eloise seethes internally, resenting how the woman's engagement to a nobleman has made her so bold and wishing her own fiancé were there to teach them a lesson. Eloise strides forward with a determined expression. Later, at a jewelry store, Eloise is shocked to find that someone has already bought out all the merchandise. Walking through the woods, Catherine tells herself to maintain a professional demeanor for the upcoming visit. When her dog makes a small noise, Catherine asks the quiet Celine what's wrong, and the trembling Swan begs not to go. Why? Catherine shows them a royal summons, explaining that she, her daughter, and her daughter's friends have all been specifically requested, which makes the Swan cry out in terror. Catherine adjusts a new ribbon in her hair, blushing as she claims it's just for a change of pace, leaving Darren speechless. She assures a worried Haniel in the basket that her older brother doesn't hate her, but Haniel reveals that he touched her. Hearing Haniel confirm it happened at the palace, Catherine's expression darkens as she begins to recall Rashid's past actions. In a chilling flashback, Rashid enters the nursery, ignoring a young and whimpering Haniel as he slowly approaches her cradle. As Haniel cries out in fear, an attendant pleads with Rashid to restrain himself, but he coldly asks what they think he would do to that thing. Back with Haniel, Catherine promises she will fight back if Rashid hurts her again. She vows they will stop seeing him if he repeats his actions, but she adds a condition. An attendant informs a man seated at an elegant outdoor table that the requested dishes are ready and asks about the guest's arrival, to which he replies, "She's here." The attendant confirms the duchess has arrived, but expresses doubt about the others mentioned, as a chart indicates Catherine, a baby swan, a hellhound, and a cyan duck have apparently come together. Looking at the attendant, Rashid coldly asks if there is a problem with her unusual retinue. Rashid sternly warns his attendant to watch their words and actions so as not to make the guest uncomfortable, or they will be held responsible, and the attendant quickly agrees. When Catherine arrives with her companions, the attendants stare in amazement, while she offers a calm smile in return. The bespectacled attendant admits to himself that with a smile like that, he could easily believe she seduced the dying duke. Recalling how the ladies of high society gossiped about Catherine's gloomy appearance, the attendant wonders why she went to the trouble of looking so beautiful today. Catherine tells her companions to look away, privately thinking Rashid looks like a possessive beast guarding its prey. Standing near Rashid, she thinks that while she doesn't believe all the rumors about him, a part of her remains wary. Rashid calmly watches his attendant, who is nervously fumbling with the tableware. Catherine sweetly tells her animal companions to say hello, which makes the attendant marvel at her ability to control a hellhound and wonder if the rumors of her having black magic are true. As she softly scolds the duck, Rashid questions how long Celine plans to keep up the act, flustering Catherine. Under the attendant's watch, Catherine makes an excuse, claiming Celine has just been a bit shy lately. A blonde man asks if she wasn't shy before, to which Catherine replies that was in the past. As the blonde man offers Catherine a dish, she feels as if she's in another world. The attendant quickly intervenes, stating it was prepared specially at His Majesty's request. Catherine blushes prettily as she accepts the food, making the attendant inwardly dismiss the rumors of her being a witch. The attendant's inner thoughts reveal that while Rashid mentioned a turkey from the market, he would never serve someone of their status such a risky food. Catherine beams with delight at the lavish spread, while the swan beside her flaps its wings excitedly. The attendant proudly lifts the cloche, announcing he personally hunted the main course for His Majesty today. The platter reveals a perfectly roasted and prepared bird. Both Catherine and the swan stare wide-eyed in horror at the roasted fowl. Imagining a memorial portrait of Darren, Catherine lets out a scream. She leaps from her chair and flees, leaving the bewildered attendant calling after the Duchess. Unfazed, Rashid calmly instructs the shocked attendant to bring out the food, while his brother suggests he eat first, concluding that he was the only one overreacting. The attendant places a plate of salmon on the table. Rashid tells the attendant to leave Catherine's plate, stating confidently that she will be back soon anyway. A title card announces Chapter 36, showing Catherine holding Haniel. Against a backdrop of white flowers, Haniel in her swan form wanders through tall grass, calling for her mother and realizing this isn't their home. She finally remembers that Catherine always flattens the grass, so she won't trip. Haniel calls out to a surprised Rashid, addressing him as Black Swan. Later, Haniel spots the dog and tells it to go away, pretending not to be Haniel, when a voice scolds her for being too loud. Rashid says she is loud and small, but Haniel continues her denial, insisting she wasn't crying and isn't even Haniel. She introduces herself as Rana, the name her mother gave her, and wonders. Rashid knelt and explained that her mom was out for a bit, but he didn't understand how the Emperor knew. Haniel refused to believe him, defiantly demanding to see Haniel's mom, while Rashid patiently repeated that she wasn't there. With a plop, she dramatically played dead, declaring that teacher Darren had taught her to do this when she met a bad person. Rashid, amused by her performance, calmly observed her on dead act. While trying to help, he noticed her untied ribbon and muttered aloud about how to fix it now. The gorgeous ribbon with a dangling ruby had come loose. Rashid gently patted her head, smiling softly and saying she was funny. He asked about her grievances, while she inwardly admitted that she shouldn't have lied, as this was actually a bit fun. He dangled the jeweled ribbon, asking if she hated it, which she shyly denied. He tied the ribbon for her and suggested she give the rest of the gifts to her mom. Elsewhere, a frantic Catherine ran through the woods, desperately calling for teacher Darren. She was holding a small, featherless bird, deeply worried as she recognized its smooth body as being from their lake. A giant gray swan approached, and Catherine called out for teacher Darren, when another voice asked, "Duchess?" The two-headed swan appeared near a fainted Celine, and Catherine expressed her relief and confusion, dismissing it as a misunderstanding. Catherine watched as the plucked bird miraculously revived from its near-death experience. When the swan asked about the misunderstanding, Catherine panicked internally, unable to admit she had mistaken him for a roasted poultry dinner. The swan, Darren, asked if any animals were missing from the lake. He clarified his question, specifically asking about cursed creatures that might have recently disappeared. Catherine confirmed there were no disappearances, as the cursed residents rarely wandered off. She was confused when Darren tilted his head thoughtfully. She wondered how teacher Darren had come to the lake, remembering that Lady Mello had invited him. When Darren asked if she was all right, she brushed it off, thinking to herself that as long as a handsome man was present, everything was fine. Catherine apologized to the large swan for the earlier commotion, and he assured the Duchess that her alarm was understandable. She marveled at his gentlemanly demeanor, wishing someone could learn from him, and confirmed that he was indeed a teacher. She gasped. She suddenly rushed toward the swan with a worried cry, calling him my dear baby. Her mind screamed in frustration, questioning what kind of mother would act this way. Catherine waved goodbye, telling teacher Darren she would see him later and warning him not to wander off. She continued to run desperately, thinking this was too dangerous. He absolutely must not. Absolutely must not. Must not what? Rashid suddenly appeared with a basket and asked. Catherine realized that since he was here, Haniel would be safe. Haniel, inside the basket, called out Mommy, causing Catherine to exclaim in relief. Rashid held the basket where Haniel was crying and complaining about being left behind, prompting Catherine to apologize profusely. confused by his presence. Catherine asked why he had brought Haniel, and he smiled and told her to take her daughter. Catherine addressed him as Your Majesty, but he chided her for leaving Haniel with just anyone. She corrected him, saying he was also Haniel's big brother. His expression stiffened, and he ordered her to say it again. Rashid moved closer to Catherine, asking her with a serious look who she had just said he was. Catherine grew anxious, worrying that his pettiness might lead him to take Haniel from her one day. Rashid flusteredly cut her off, insisting that was not what he meant at all. As Haniel peeked out from the basket, Catherine thanked Rashid profusely, but he interrupted her. Suddenly calm, Rashid mused that her sincere gratitude caused a strange, dull ache that was harder to handle than her usual anger. He cleared his throat and asked how she had found him and whether he needed a reason to visit. At her seemingly obvious question, he sighed and shook his head, leaving Catherine completely baffled. He mentioned the upcoming northern hunting competition, a topic that seemed to surprise Catherine. Catherine expressed her dislike for hunting unless it was for survival, which caught Rashid off guard. When he mentioned the parties and banquets of the social season, she declared she hated those even more. She reminded him that he had attended that party and witnessed firsthand how cruelly everyone looked at her. Catherine, holding Haniel, insisted she was perfectly happy just being with her baby. She inwardly realized she had gotten too carried away, as he hadn't actually been asking about her personal preferences. Catherine awkwardly suggested he must have work to attend to, but Rashid firmly said no. He declared with surprising intensity that he also detested such barbaric activities, his vehemence startling Catherine. Catherine formally thanked him for the invitation and his help before preparing to leave. Rashid suddenly stopped her, demanding to know who this daring fellow was. End of chapter. Rashid confronted Catherine, pointing out that she had mentioned the name Darren, which was a man's name. He harshly accused her of playing dumb and demanded to know who this new man was. Catherine looked at Rashid, about to respond to his accusation. The scene jumped back to Catherine explaining to a skeptical Rashid that Darren was just a swan. She argued that since it was a signet, it was technically a male animal, not a man. Rashid, struck speechless by her bizarre logic, questioned what a male was. He angrily asked if Darren was her son, prompting Catherine to retort that he'd better be his son. Catherine felt a wave of resignation, thinking that at this point, nothing could surprise her anymore. Rashid accused her of having a secret affair, suggesting her defensive posture was because the topic bothered her. He stared at her in utter exasperation, thinking what an incomprehensible woman she was. Haniel's cry for her mommy interrupted their tense conversation. Catherine's attention immediately shifted to Haniel, who was rustling in the basket. A narration bubble explained that their little princess would spin in place when she wanted to show something off. Catherine doted on Haniel's cute display, then noticed she was wearing a new accessory and asked who gave it to her. Haniel proudly showed off the gorgeous jeweled ribbon. Catherine looked at a wall of portraits, smiling as she guessed the gift was from her third brother, and shook her head. Haniel corrected her mom, pointing out that the gift was from the Emperor. Darren, standing right behind them, asked if she was implying he was the fourth brother, then sternly told her to stop if it was intentional. Humph. He inwardly scoffed at her insinuation. While Catherine watched in surprise, Haniel happily surveyed a magnificent estate from her basket. Catherine asked Haniel if the Emperor had really tied the ribbon for her. She confirmed it. Darren told Catherine that compared to the rude tenon and the overprotected Peyton, Rashid seemed to be the most clear-headed one. Pondering his words, Catherine considered temporarily shelving her plan for the #1 candidate. He leaned in to warn Catherine that Rashid was the one she really needed to watch out for. She briskly handed him something to wipe his face with. Catherine reminded an ecstatic Haniel to remember the promise she made. In a brief flashback, Catherine tells Haniel that if she realizes her brother didn't mean to hurt her. Back in the present, a worried Darren told Catherine to stop whatever she was doing. Catherine clenched her fists, cheering Haniel on to show what she could do. As Haniel waddled forward, Catherine was thrilled, while Darren asked what exactly he was supposed to be looking at. Catherine turned to him excitedly, asking if he saw what Haniel just did. He gasped, looking surprised, and Catherine explained that Haniel was doing much better, then dismissed it, assuming he didn't care. Standing beside her, he firmly stated that he definitely saw it. When Catherine asked what he saw, he became flustered and mentioned what she had just said. Haniel proudly announced she did it all by herself, and a distracted Catherine agreed. Catherine held up Haniel, showing him how happy the simple ribbon made her. He gently caressed Catherine's face, catching her completely off guard. She continued her train of thought, recalling how her daughter used to only be able to take one step. He moved closer, gently telling her that he had been listening. Celine expressed her relief after the shocking roasted poultry incident, lamenting that she almost died without confessing. Celine looked at the exhausted Catherine and Haniel resting on a lounge chair and asked why they looked so tired. Haniel told her mom the pain in her chest was gone, and Catherine confirmed she felt better too. When Haniel mentioned her emperor brother, Catherine knew who she was talking about. Catherine felt uneasy, unsure what to do about Rashid's unpredictable move of suddenly touching her cheek. She clutched her chest, questioning if his confusing actions were truly meaningless. Catherine found the thought absurd, inwardly scolding Rashid for acting like a romantic hero instead of the tyrant he was supposed to be. She reassured a worried Haniel that it was okay, but the little chick still seemed concerned about the emperor. Wow! Haniel excitedly showed off the new jeweled ribbon, asking Catherine to blow on it, while Catherine doted on her little princess. Celine commented from the side that it was strangely extravagant for the emperor to give such a gift to a child. Catherine privately thought that if Haniel were treated properly in the palace, she would receive such lavish gifts every day. To Catherine's surprise, Haniel handed her the jewel, announcing it was for Mommy. Haniel clarified with a determined look that this particular gift was not for her. The beautiful orange jewel hanging from the ribbon sparkled. Catherine thought that this brilliant gem was never meant for her, and she had been returning all of Rashid's gifts because she knew that greed only brought pain. Though numb, yet still flesh and blood, she admitted it hurt her more because the one causing the pain was Rashid. Catherine tried to return the jewel, saying it was from His Majesty for Haniel, but Haniel insisted it was for Mommy. Confused by Haniel's insistence, Catherine asked what she meant. 3 magical apparitions of Haniel appeared, each holding a jewel, and they danced around happily, making Catherine think her daughter was too precious. Catherine instructed a swan to follow the nanny, explaining that she needed to prepare dinner by soaking fish fillets, and then she transformed into a black swan. In the storage room, Catherine heard a voice and wondered if they had already returned. Opening the door, she called out, asking if someone had forgotten something, then stopped in surprise. A group of lavishly dressed women appeared, one of whom warmly addressed Catherine as her eldest daughter. This left Catherine stunned. Catherine stood frozen, completely bewildered by the sudden visit. End of chapter, beginning of the next. We hope you enjoyed the previous journey and are ready for a new adventure. At a tea party, a white-haired woman asked her mother if it was awkward to see her family again, with Catherine sitting opposite them. The woman enthusiastically told Catherine how much they had missed her, and Catherine realized this must be her stepmother. Catherine's narration expressed that she would rather deal with strangers than these greedy women at the tea party. She found Rania's scrutinizing gaze very uncomfortable. A lady at the tea party nervously asked Catherine if she was ruining the reunion, insisting it was an honor to see her. Rania feigned politeness, embarrassing the other women who claimed to be worried about their humble daughters. Rania sided with the women, agreeing that Catherine shouldn't be acting this way. Catherine sipped her tea and coldly told them that begging like dogs would get them nowhere. When a woman accused her of insulting her own family, Catherine retorted that her so-called family, who sold her off, should look in a mirror before lecturing her. A sharp voice shrieked Catherine's name. Catherine coldly corrected the woman, reminding her of the duchess title she acquired after being sold. In a flashback, a little girl cried for her mother while a white-haired woman nonchalantly drank tea. The woman told Catherine she was being too harsh, but Catherine icily addressed her directly as Rania. Unfazed, Catherine told Rania she knew this was a pressure tactic, using so-called family. Rania feigned ignorance, but Catherine offered to explain the situation to her. Catherine stated she was indifferent to the others' fates, leaving their bleak future for Rania to decide. Inwardly, Catherine faced Rania without fear, thanking Rashid for the strength he had given her. Rania accepted Catherine's directness, smiling as she gestured for 2 cloaked men to come forward. Rania ordered the confused relatives to be taken out, and her guards immediately complied. As the relatives were dragged away, Catherine lamented their foolishness, after which Rania spoke to her again. Rania called Catherine cold for abandoning her family, pointing out that she herself was still here. Catherine gave a charming smile and declare that her only family now was Rania. Catherine calmly told Rania to give up her futile attempts, as she already knew what to do. Rania warned Catherine she would regret it, but Catherine coldly challenged her and called for someone to enter. A woman rushed in holding Haniel, frantically crying for her mommy. Fury flashed in Catherine's eyes as she screamed for the woman to let Haniel go, while Rania gave a triumphant sneer. Another woman pointed out that she recognized the jewel on Haniel's neck from the city. Rebecca excitedly speculated that His Majesty must have bought the jewels, but Rania harshly told her to shut up. The woman holding Haniel blamed the situation on Catherine, but Catherine issued a final warning to put the bird down. The woman dismissively tightened her grip, causing Haniel to cry out, and Catherine's expression turned utterly cold. With a sharp crack, Catherine slapped the woman hard across the face, making her cry out in pain. The woman clutched her cheek and staggered back in shock, still holding the tearful Haniel. Enraged, the woman threatened to kill Catherine, who coldly told her that was her last chance to leave. Catherine grabbed another young woman's arm, warning her it would all be over if she dared to touch Haniel. A third woman held the young woman back, and the stepmother scolded her, revealing the girl's name was Rebecca. Rebecca trembled with rage, shocked that her sister had sided with Catherine. The stepmother coldly ordered Rebecca to lower her hand, warning that she could get very angry. She reflected on seeing a precious child held hostage and being unable to let her die. Catherine confronted her mother, challenging her stepmother by pointing out the contrast between her coldness toward her family and her desperation over a Swan signet. When Catherine demanded to know what she wanted, her stepmother said she wanted her to behave. Her stepmother warned her to stop holding onto pointless hopes regarding His Majesty. This confused Catherine. She clarified, mocking the delusions of a has-been widow and telling Catherine to live quietly and then disappear. With a confident smile, Catherine said she would be more than happy to, if only the Emperor would let her go. The stepmother gritted her teeth in fury, shouting Rania's name. Catherine calmly told Rania to stop using her as a punching bag. Rania clenched her fists, demanding to know if Catherine thought she was a coward. Rania laughed, grabbing a terrified Rebecca and declaring she would become even more of a coward. Catherine realized she should have known something was wrong, thinking that Rania's fondness for swans stemmed from desperation. Rania extended her hand with a sinister smile, demanding. Catherine handed something over. Rania threatened to slit her throat if she said the wrong thing to the Emperor, claiming an unknown item would keep her in line. A promotional image showed Catherine holding a sleeping signet with a serene expression. Rania grabbed Catherine's arm, pleading with her not to listen, while Catherine demanded she hand over the one she cared about before someone got hurt. Catherine showed the ribbon, revealing that His Majesty himself had tied on Haniel. In another scene, Catherine explained that His Majesty had tied the ribbon himself, which Rania found unbelievable, but Catherine told her to go ask him. Rania sneered, suggesting they go ask the Emperor together, certain that the cold-hearted man would soon decide who to get rid of. Rania yelled in fury, but Catherine calmly stated she had warned her multiple times not to provoke her. Rania's eyes gleamed as she warned Catherine she would soon regret her arrogance. Catherine retorted that her only regret was having silently endured life for so long. She was content with the current situation and continued that she could let other provocations slide, but not when it came to Haniel, prompting Rania to mock her for running to His Majesty. Catherine sighed dismissively, thinking that in Rania's world, everything seemed to boil down to a man. Rania flew into a rage, while another woman tried to hold her back, calling her sister. Catherine watched Rania's outburst with a calm, unflinching gaze. Catherine taunted Rania, saying her behavior made her wonder what was so great about Rashid anyway. Elsewhere, an attendant asked Rashid about the hunting festival, noting there was still time before it began. Rashid contemplated the matter, thinking the current mourning period had been long enough. The attendant agreed, saying the Emperor allowing the festival would officially end the mourning. Rashid relaxed on his throne, declaring that no one in the north could extend the mourning period. The attendant then asked about the banquet, suggesting it be held at the Winter Palace since an empress had not yet been appointed. Rashid cut him off, confirming the banquet would be at his palace, and the attendant agreed with a slight smile. Rashid commented that it was a good idea. The attendant noted the tight schedule before the hunting season, but Rashid abruptly decided to cancel the event, calling it barbaric nonsense. Rashid startled the attendant, who thought he was joking and promised a grander event after Rashid returned to the Imperial Palace. The attendant was stunned when Rashid asked why he had to go back. Realizing his slip-up, the attendant nervously recoiled, quickly clarifying that all lands belonged to the emperor, just as a voice called out for his majesty. Catherine appeared at the doorway, surprised to see Rashid, who called out her name. She stood awkwardly as Rashid and another man looked at her. Rashid firmly ordered Catherine to speak to him, while she and the other man watched nervously. Catherine stood before his desk and hesitantly asked if she could also attend the banquet. Celine asked if Catherine was really invited to the banquet by His Majesty, and Catherine confirmed it. In a flashback, Catherine told Rashid that his sudden appearances were exhausting, and tried to leave. To her surprise, Rashid nonchalantly allowed her to go. Rashid then sneered rhetorically, asking how troublesome she would become if he refused her. Catherine scoffed inwardly, annoyed at his implication that she was always a nuisance. Back in the present, Celine warned Catherine that Rania would stop at nothing, prompting Catherine to reflect on her rival's low opinion of her. Celine pointed to the scars on her wings from protecting Haniel, urging Catherine to be more careful. Catherine decided to use this conflict to see who was truly on her side, tired of being an easy target. Startled by Catherine's intense gaze, Celine nervously backed away, insisting she only meant that Catherine was delicate. Catherine was horrified at the thought that Haniel could have died in the conflict. She blamed herself but refused Celine's comfort, saying it was foolish to know evil existed and do nothing. She realized that if she remained passive, her enemies would only come for her again. Catherine announced her new resolve to meet people and take back everything, her ambition shocking Celine. She looked down at Haniel, who was now lying safely in the basket Celine was carrying. The camera focused on the jeweled ribbon, a symbol of what had saved Haniel from harm. Haniel was held lovingly, looking happy and content after her ordeal. The narration implied that Rashid would have been pleased if Catherine understood the meaning of his gift. In a flashback, Rashid thoughtfully decided that Rania also needed a new ribbon. The scene switched to a grand estate, where Eloise descended a stone staircase. Eloise angrily questioned a man named Ronan about why he had summoned her so late, but assumed he had a good reason. Upon entering the room, she found Ronan looking down at a bound man and asked if he was a magician. Ronan confirmed her suspicion, revealing the captive was a court magician who once belonged to the tower. He explained he had caught him lurking around, but Eloise was furious, asking if he was mad for capturing a royal magician. Eloise frantically questioned Ronan's actions, worried about what would happen if the emperor found out. His magician had been captured. Eloise inwardly wondered why Rashid had suddenly come to the north. Ronan subdued the captive with magic and asked Eloise if she was curious about the emperor's visit. With a crackling sound, the captured man struggled under the painful magical restraints. The captive demanded to know who Ronan was, furious at his treatment, while Ronan asked if the Great Tower had ever mentioned him. Ronan looked down at his captive and sarcastically asked what the old man had said, suggesting he was called the cursed magician or the shame of the tower. The captive magician angrily demanded his release, declaring that this insult extended to His Majesty and the Holy Tower. Ronan was unmoved. Ronan released a menacing aura, demanding the captive tell him the real reason for the emperor's visit. The captive magician begged Eloise, the Lord of Ivanito, to come to her senses, offering to break Ronan's spell. Eloise calmly replied that she did not seek the emperor's mercy, correcting the magician's misunderstanding, while the magician panicked at her being locked up with a man. In a dark magical scene, Ronan taunted Eloise, doubting if she would report their activities to His Majesty. The captain of the magicians recalled a forbidden mind control magic, questioning if Eloise was casting it, while Ronan warned her of the cost. Eloise questioned Ronan for using a life so carelessly, as their deal was to hand her over, prompting him to sarcastically call himself a true dark sorcerer. Unfazed, Eloise called the method inelegant and confidently stated she would one day be compensated for the life force consumed. Ronan agreed it must happen and ordered the struggling magician to think. The magician then cried out in pain. Ronan revealed with a cruel sneer that he had once come close to becoming the master of the tower the magician revered. The scene switched to a carriage traveling down a path, as a voice called out for Catherine. Inside the carriage, Rashid asked Catherine why she was scowling. Catherine, startled from her thoughts, spoke to Rashid, who was sitting next to a basket that also contained Celine and Haniel. Rashid sneered, joking that from her expression, one might think he was kidnapping her. Catherine, sitting opposite him, revealed inwardly that she had been losing sleep watching over Haniel ever since Rania's visit. Outside her house, Rashid ordered Catherine to come out, threatening to go in himself if she refused. Catherine was inwardly furious at a man showing up on a widow's doorstep, telling him that was exactly why he shouldn't be there. She inwardly deduced that someone who barged in uninvited was usually trying to catch a mouse or was a pervert. Noticing her sly sneer, Rashid questioned it, while she thought to herself that he always did as he pleased. Annoyed and half asleep, Catherine lamented her cursed fate that wouldn't even let her rest in peace, while Celine asked if she had slept well. In her confusion, Catherine blurted out that today was Mr. Dallowin's weekend swimming lesson, leaving Rashid completely bewildered. She quickly corrected herself, claiming she was just spacing out, and Rashid silently changed the subject, saying her words reminded him of something. Haniel playfully stuck her tongue out at Catherine, who groaned in irritation. Rashid commented that he had never found Catherine particularly cute before, until now. He clarified that seeing her next to the grimy Haniel made her look decent, and questioned if Haniel was really that bad. As the carriage moved, Catherine asked for their destination, and Rashid playfully asked if she was curious. She confirmed her curiosity, assuming his sudden visit must be for something urgent. Rashid suggested she sleep for a while if she was tired, but Catherine immediately denied it, calling the idea unthinkable. A moment later, she was fast asleep. Rashid watched her, deciding to tell her his plan anyway. He explained that he had to prepare for this ordeal and that he never did things by halves. Rashid watched with a determined expression. He told her to just follow his lead, unless she wanted to be stubborn. In a flashback, Rashid held Catherine's hand, telling her to pretend she knew nothing, and he would do the same. Rashid gently held Catherine, enjoying the tender moment. Back in the present, Catherine sat quietly with Celine and Haniel in the basket. Rashid knocked on the carriage door and asked if Catherine was getting out, which she quickly confirmed. Catherine worried that Rashid had noticed she had fallen asleep. Celine tried to get her attention and suggested they'd be better off staying in the carriage. Celine explained that ever since the incident with Rania, Haniel had become timid around people and might be frightened by the Emperor. As Celine pleaded for them to go on ahead, Rashid called for Catherine, who reluctantly agreed to leave the carriage. Catherine entrusted Haniel to Celine's care, though her worried expression showed that Celine's optimism only made her more anxious. Walking beside Rashid, Catherine hesitantly asked about the urgent task he had mentioned earlier. She looked around in confusion. She realized he had brought her to a dress shop. Rashid sighed, calling it an important task, but as Catherine stared at a gorgeous gown, she questioned his motives. Rashid told Catherine that she would be accompanying him to a banquet and must be dressed appropriately. He criticized her current all-black morning attire, deeming it too somber for such an occasion. Catherine worriedly asked Rashid if her dress was really that bad. She admitted it was one of her better outfits, and lowering her head, confessed that she had put some thought into her appearance. Rashid leaned closer to her, declaring that in his eyes, her dress was the most beautiful. Stunned, Catherine was struck silent. He added that if he found her beautiful, then everyone else should think so too. A shop owner named Viscount Dion ecstatically greeted the Emperor, but Rashid cut him short with a later. Catherine scoffed inwardly, thinking his compliments might have worked when they first met, but not anymore. She maintained a cool and skeptical expression, unmoved by his words. In a flashback, Rashid stood with another woman, calling out to a solitary Catherine. He jokingly asked if the dear Duchess was once again lost in his stories. Back in the present, Catherine mentally chided herself to focus and not misinterpret his intentions. She reflected on their mismatched pairing, the Emperor and the Witch of the North, and concluded that was why people were so curious about them. Resolving herself, she decided to clarify her intentions to the woman beside Rashid, as it was a matter of imperial affairs. Catherine explained that as the one who would sit beside the Emperor at the first banquet in the north, she couldn't appear unsightly. She ignored the woman's empty chatter, stating that she had intended to find a new dress anyway. Watching the scene, Catherine thought it was a simple fact that Rashid could become the center of attention just by standing there. A promotional image for the series is shown on screen. Catherine realized with resignation that she had no choice but to go along with his decision. She decided that since she was here, she might as well enjoy it. Wow, a series of exquisite, sparkling gowns was displayed before her. Catherine reached out to touch a red gown, but hesitated, thinking there was no point in touching it. She stood frozen, captivated by a gorgeous, sparkling blue gown on display. Just a moment ago, in the dress shop, Catherine had stared blankly at the gown, remembering that the eyes reflected in the lake water when she first arrived were the same color. She stroked the beautiful blue fabric with a wistful smile, wondering what it would feel like to be enveloped in it. Rashid appeared behind her and asked if she liked the dress, startling Catherine, who claimed she was just looking and imagining if the color would suit her. Rashid pressed for an answer, asking if she didn't like it, which made her blush. Catherine shyly admitted that she did like it, as a woman in a green dress peeked from behind a curtain. The shop owner came out, gushing about the stunning gown and the unparalleled elegance of her shop. Catherine politely told Rashid she would take the dress, but he replied skeptically, "Is that so?" implying he saw through her formality. In a sudden, shocking move, Rashid drew his sword and sliced the beautiful dress in two, causing the shop owner to scream. With a dangerous smile playing on his lips, Rashid coolly said it was a shame and told her to try something else. Catherine, bewildered by his actions, wondered why he kept looking behind her as he spoke. She suggested they look at morning clothes, which made the irritated Rashid curse the damn morning clothes in his mind. Rashid cornered her, impatiently demanding a clear answer. Did she or did she not like the blue dress? She admitted she liked it, but hesitated, prompting him to press on what the problem was. Rashid's gaze sharpened as he asked if she was truly still in deep mourning for the late Duke. He asked mockingly if her husband had left a will demanding she wear black forever. Catherine, annoyed, denied this, explaining she had never even seen her husband's face and was simply not used to such extravagant clothes. Now, Rashid sat by the fabric of the ruined dress, impatiently ordering her to change into a new one. When the shop owner offered to help pick out jewelry, Catherine refused, stating she would do it herself. Rashid glared at the shop owner, blaming her for not doing her job, which frightened the woman into pleading with Catherine for help. Looking at the mountain of purchased dresses and accessories, Rashid thought, this didn't feel half bad. The shop owner nervously urged Catherine to try on the dresses, while Catherine found it strange that she was accepting Rashid's high-handed behavior. Catherine asked if the fitting would take long, and the owner explained it required care and natural light. The owner looked out the window, noticing a heavy rain was about to start. Catherine smiled kindly, reassuring the woman that she understood the simple desire to want to try on a pretty dress. Meanwhile, a faint voice from the carriage asked in confusion where she was. Haniel peeked out her basket, looking around with a pair of curious, big red eyes. Realizing she was alone, Haniel's eyes filled with tears, and she started to miss her mommy. Noticing the sleeping Celine, Haniel recognized her as her nanny and decided it was time for a lullaby. Munya, Haniel playfully climbed onto Celine, complaining that she was supposed to be resting. Celine mumbled that she wasn't asleep, startling Haniel into momentarily mistaking her for Catherine. Haniel peeked out the carriage door, happily recognizing the falling raindrops. A warm memory surfaced in Haniel's mind. When it rains, good things happen. As she listened to the rain, an illusory voice from the past asked, "Is Princess Haniel doing well?" The memory faded, and Haniel pouted, sad that the voice wasn't her beloved mommy's. Elsewhere, a whispered conversation about the Empress leaving on a rainy day was overheard by a little girl who wondered about its meaning. Filled with a new sense of purpose, Haniel announced she had to find her mommy. Haniel jumped from the carriage into the rain, determined to bring her mommy back, and called out for her loudly. She ran cheerfully through the town, certain she would find her mother soon. Catherine ran through the rain, covering her head and wondering if Haniel was still sleeping somewhere. She threw open the carriage door, her face filled with dread, and called out for Celine. Finding the carriage empty, her desperate cries for her baby echoed inside. Seeing a dropped bag of snacks on the ground, Catherine realized Celine was also gone and concluded they must be together. Catherine was suddenly seized by panic, shouting for Celine, while a trembling little duck stood nearby. The sky was overcast, and heavy rain drenched Catherine as she stood frozen in the street, the little duck at her feet. The duck was Celine, who was frantically blaming herself for falling asleep, but Catherine cut her off, insisting they had to find Haniel now. Catherine, filled with guilt, regretted not bringing Haniel with her, or at least closing the carriage door. Catherine ordered the frantic Celine to go back, but she protested through tears, wanting to help find Haniel. Catherine firmly explained that she couldn't guarantee Celine's safety and that someone had to wait by the carriage in case Haniel returned. Celine asked what Catherine would do, and she decided to search the vicinity, believing a frightened Haniel couldn't have gone far. She clutched her head in frustration, mentally scolding herself for thinking there was anything fortunate about this situation. Looking at the crowded town square, Catherine had an unexpected thought. Maybe this was a good thing after all. Determined to find her daughter, Catherine focused her will and ran through the downpour, calling out for her baby.